You lie back against you, pull the saffron scarf tighter around your neck. Bend your head to examine the scratch in the firelight. Hear the saddle leather crack like thick crusted bread. The horse snorts, as if to say, "Get on with it, buddy." There are no hospitals in this part of the country. Clinics are as rare as August rain. Even if you make it to town, the doctor might be on a ranch 10 miles away, attending to a baby, or caught in an unscheduled shootout. So the cowboy adopts the local customs, packs himself up, stops the bleeding, boils himself, consoles himself with a joke, and then goes to sleep on the ground as if the concept of a bed were still in its infancy. You remember last week's campfire story. In boomtowns like Abilene or Dodge, the old man with the white beard said, "The taverns come first, and the doctors come later. Most nights in the fields there's no one but you and the grass and the stars." It's funny, but it's true. The need here is, now, cool down now, clean up now, tie up now. That's why first aid knowledge is passed on by hand, by countless nights like tonight, when you pour warm water from the coffee pot, water that has boiled long enough to stop the dust from the road, and let it cool for a moment to lessen your boldness. A clean cloth cut from the hem of yesterday's undershirt is waiting in your saddlebag, rolled up like a thin prayer book. You follow the order of your never-written vows. First wash your hands, then wash the stain, then let the night air dry. The wind on the steps sounds like someone coaxing. Take it slow, don't rush. Here you tilt your ear to the sizzle again, remembering the mainstream truth that often accompanies the smell of coffee. In the 19th century, the U.S. military issued coffee as part of its daily rations. The practice left the barracks with the discharged soldiers, bringing with them teams of pack horses, cowboys, and loggers, each learning to boil water, filter the dust, and then touch the wound. Tonight's coffee is thus more than just a drink. It is a reminder that water has become gentle, and the night has passed. You smile as you remember a weird trick taught to you by the cook at Barrett's farm. Take clean eggshells, crush them, and mix them with sawdust to sprinkle on the floor of your tent to keep them from getting wet and sticky. That's how you avoid puddles around your sleeping area. And with coffee, sometimes half an eggshell dropped into the pot will pull the grounds down like a small net, making the water clearer. Kitchen tips have their own separate paths to the first aid kit, because they both serve the same purpose, keeping clean. For antiseptics, your field kit is pitifully simple. Some white spirit in a brown bottle, some iodine in a cork-stoppered bottle, and a packet of faded carbolic powder, a late Listerine fad from across the sea. You are not familiar with the terminology, but you know that alcohol stings like a scolding, iodine stains the skin to an autumnal hue, and carbolic is as pungent as a newly opened barn. You dab the spirit around the edge of the cut, your fingers swear softly, and you smile reassuringly. "Hush, my joint is more stubborn than yours." Then you blow it dry, and bandage it with a clean strip of cloth, not so much that your heart complains, just enough so that the skin edges lie side by side like two sensible neighbors. If truth be told, whiskey sometimes steps in as a loudmouthed relative. A sip for courage, a drop to clean the knife, a dash to clean the wound. That's the trinity of many a dust-stormy night. Historians still debate whether whiskey is a real antiseptic or just a sedative, and whether the booze that induces sleep is worth the price of dehydration the next day. You choose a compromise, a small sip to calm the nerves, leaving the cleaning to boiling water and alcohol. Further afield, there are tips that sound like fancy kitchen stories. Some swear that boiled ponytails make a makeshift suture, and there has been a history of using hair or sheep intestines as sutures. Others use dried spider webs to stop bleeding, because the fine silk sticks well and is sometimes soaked in astringent ash. You keep your cool with such anecdotes, but tonight there's no need for that. A scrape requires only patience and clean water, not the rescue hero crucible. You sit up straight, your back against the saddle, trying to move your bandaged finger. The throbbing sensation contracts like a stretched string, then you give up. You breathe slowly, realizing that your breathing has become the rhythm of the night. Every time the wind shakes, the coals make a crackling sound, and somewhere, a late bird reminds you. Go to sleep. You check your silent reminders. Change the bandage tomorrow. Wash it again the next night. Avoid dirt. Don't pick weeds with your bare hands if you don't have to. In this sparsely populated area, cleanliness is the antibiotic before antibiotics existed. You joke to yourself, because here, your best friend is the voice in your head. So my tricks are no different from the prairie lab: boil, wash, dry, tie. A crash course sponsored by the prairie. Joking, but it's true. Speed and simplicity save nights, leaving complexity for tomorrow morning when you reach the nearest farm where someone knows more about sewing than you. And if you don't, you still know the signs to watch for: spreading redness, burning, a pounding pulse around the edges of the wound. At that point, pride should give way to survival instinct. Call for help, ask for a good horse, find a way. You remember something else, both comforting and amusing. There is always a piece of old silver in the saddlebag. Some people use coins as makeshift pressurizers, placed on the belt to keep the pressure even when moving, especially on bumpy roads. A handful of scraps of silver can buy more than just coffee. It can also buy the chance to stop being a rider. Such props, along with belts, canvas, and scarves, are all ready to change careers when you need them. Night has fallen, and you, the reluctant medic, have finished your shift. You shake your shoulders, letting your back rest on the ground, listening to the saddle pillow sigh like a farmer contemplating sowing. The moon comes out, drawing a thread-like line of light across the bandage. For a brief moment, you see everything come together: the scratch, the boiling water, the clean cloth, the wind, the heartbeat, all versions of the same lesson. In this place of scarcity, kindness to small things is kindness to life. Then you close your eyes. The coffee cools on the ice, the kettle is still warm in your hands. The calves are quiet. The grass has stopped telling its stories. You tell yourself one last time. Tomorrow go to the farm, borrow iodine from the landlady, ask for some ointment, exchange it for a better piece of linen. But that is the sun's business. Now the work is done. You have made the water obedient, the scratch obedient, and the night as gentle as a horse that has been grazing. Sleep, for tomorrow is a long way, and these hands will need to be strong to teach the reins to obey instead of writing novels on leather. You rummage through your saddlebags as if rummaging through your memories, the rich scents of leather, turpentine, and sun-dried linen, and set out before the fire your own pocket clinic. The old tin box that once held your cigarettes now serves as a neat cabinet, a triangular handkerchief folded flat like a letter, a roll of white linen bandage tied with a thread, a small bottle of iodine with a cork stopper, a bottle of alcohol with a faded label, a clean old dagger, a piece of beeswax, a little amber ointment, a few coins that glisten as if asking for a job. On the lid of the box, you place a piece of lye soap and a piece of oilcloth to wrap everything up, in case the rain plays with your saddlebags. First, the traveling tailor. Your bundle of needles and threads. The Easterners call it a housewife, and we jokingly call it a housewife, is in a small cloth bag tied with string. Inside are 2 or 3 needles of different sizes, linen and cotton thread, and a yard of split thread, all waxed for smoothness and durability. A few buttons, small wrought iron tweezers. Mainstream fact, as gentle as the wind. Since the American Civil War, soldiers and frontiersmen have carried housewives to mend clothing and sometimes skin when forced to. The habit has followed them out into the prairie, ingrained in their saddlebags like a dagger in its sheath. You lift the bundle, smelling the scent of beeswax and freshly laundered fabric, a scent that promises Every frayed thread can be mended. Next, the bandage. You've torn it from a muslin sheet earlier in the season, washed it, boiled it, dried it in the sun, and rolled it tightly around a small wooden core. A clean bandage is something you trust like the horizon. Placed correctly, compressed just right, it helps the blood understand moderation. Oh, and there's your indigo scarf poking out of your pocket like you're applying for a residency. Joke 1. I have a triangular degree. It boasts. You laugh. Because triangular scarves are a great way to sling an arm, wrap a head, line a splint, or cut into a pressure bandage. The dagger is kept in a leather sheath, the blade wiped with alcohol, the body lightly oiled to prevent rust. You do not let it play the role of heroic cutter. It has only two jobs when it is good: cutting a bandage and neatly slicing a stubborn thorn after cleaning and boiling the needle. A clean knife is a routine, not an event. You keep a small pair of scissors, boiled and dried, next to the knife to avoid using your teeth in moments of impatience. 2 tiny glass bottles followed. One contained alcohol, strong as direct advice. The other iodine, reddish-brown as the fall of leaves. Remember the silvery packet of carbolic powder that an Abilene dealer had sold. With a story about Dr. Lister. Historians still debate whether most cowboys actually used the new antiseptic in the field or relied mainly on brandy and boiling water. Diaries and purchase books give a half answer. Wherever they could reach a drugstore, the smell of iodine spread. Deep in the field, boiling water and cleanliness were king. Ointment, this was the soul of comfort. A little tin jar contained homemade salve, melted beef or bear fat, mixed with turpentine and a pinch of beeswax, sometimes with a little turpentine or witch hazel if the nearest market had some. You used the salve to cover chafing, the edges of scrapes after they had dried and settled. It kept the skin moist enough to keep it from wrinkling, but not so sealed that it was stuffy. Quirky tidbits sprang from memory. You might have substituted yucca root for soap, crushed in water to lather up for hand and bandage wash. The root was both a natural soap and a source of comfort on nights when supplies were scarce. You pick up a piece of soft white lint, the kind of lint you spin yourself from old cloth, wash, dry in the sun, and fluff up, to place on the wound before bandaging it. The lint is like a small, obedient cloud. Next to it are a few small rolls of wicks. You twist sterile cotton into strands, cut them short. These wicks serve as an outlet for the fluid at the site of the stasis, allowing the wound to breathe and not become irritated. You remind yourself, wicks are good friends if they know when to come in and out, not permanent residents. I in the tin. A few old pennies lie like moon discs. You tell them their job: to place on the bandage, under the wrap, in the right place for pressure. The pennies become pressure buttons that help distribute pressure when you're rocking in the saddle for hours. Joke 2 rolls in. One wants to apply for a promotion to deputy sheriff's badge. You say to do a good job with gravity. Also keep a stout tweezer for splinters, a large needle for removing cactus spines, not to mention the evil, and a few of the newfangled safety pins, a strange but useful invention, boiled, ready to hold the bandage in place when your hands are full. A piece of charcoal pencil and thin wax paper allow you to write the date of the bandage change right on the box. A small discipline, a big benefit, since memory in the Wild West is prone to self-interpretation. You pour some alcohol into the cap, drop the needle and pin in, and hear them click together like two crickets chatting. Carefully lifting it, you thread the wax thread, tying a double knot. The needle looks at you like an actor before a curtain. Joke 3. I'm confident sewing clothes, I'm nervous sewing skin. It murmurs, but you know that in most cases, a good pressure bandage, kept dry and changed on time, is enough. Stitching is only for tears, neat, clean, and mandatory, when there's steady kerosene light and your hands don't shake. Your principle remains the same. Less invasive, more patient. You uncork the iodine, smell the distant, hospital medicine smell, and set the bottle next to the alcohol bottle for easy access. Images from bustling towns flash by, drugstores with signs reading, tincture iodine, phenol, witch hazel. Traveling doctors offering, wash wounds, stitch up, deliver babies. And where pubs stand in front of churches, iodine is often replaced by white wine and boiling water. The second mainstream fact, as clear as the rattle of a spoon on a glass, by the 1860s, Listerine antiseptics had spread throughout the English-speaking world. By the end of the century, iodine and carbolic were available in many Western pharmacies, though distance, budget, and habit meant they were not always in everyone's saddlebag. You check? Soap? Yes. Boiling water? Yes, the coffee pot nods. Bandages? 2 rolls. Ointment? A jar. Alcohol, iodine, carbolic powder? Enough for several nights. Needles, thread, beeswax? Yes, and that scent that inspires confidence and order. Coins, pins, tweezers? All in their proper places. All wrapped in oilcloth, tied with string, placed in the inside pocket of the bag so as not to crush the horse's ribs when you gallop. You teach yourself the process again, slowly, steadily, like chanting. Wash hands and tools with soap. Boil water. Let cool to room temperature. Wash wound gently. If necessary, dab alcohol around edges. Let air dry. Apply lint. Bandage in the direction the blood wants to flow. If anything is hot and swollen, place a small wick for a few hours to let the wound breathe. Change the bandage tomorrow. Write it down. It's as simple as counting stars, but you have to count every night. In a corner of your memory, you recall the old herdsman's account. Sometimes the ranch hands were the best doctors for 30 miles. They had a chest of ointment, a bottle of iodine, and a look that stopped the cowboys from complaining. Historians still debate whether cowboys sewed themselves regularly or relied more on women, blacksmiths, or traveling doctors on rare occasions. But kitchen logs, pharmacy receipts, and bandages left on fences all confirm one thing: the saddle kit was more habit than fact. The wind blows through the tent, making the fire tilt its head in appreciation. You pack each item, hearing the rustle of the oilcloth. The lid of the tin can snap shut with a refreshing click. In your mind, you make a list of additions: more bandages. Replace the empty iodine bottle. Ask for hazel leaves in town. Grab some yucca roots if you're going through bathing country. You place the whole box in your saddlebag, cushioning it with your indigo scarf. The resident now back to his wind-keeping duties. You look at your bandaged finger, and see it pulse with the fire. Outside, the calves are silent. Inside, a small order is being built in leather, wood, cloth, metal, humble objects that make for peace. You are not becoming a healer. You are just learning to speak the language of cleanliness and patience. In a land where things come with the wind, these bags are a promise that can be grasped. You straighten your coat, pull your saffron scarf around your neck, place the box close to your back to keep it from shaking, pull the blanket up to your chest. Before you close your eyes, you whisper to the coins in the box, the buttons, in charge. Tomorrow will be bumpy, remember to be careful. In the moonlight, they glow softly like 2 cat-watching eyes. The night is quiet. And in that quiet, you know that whenever the sky tests you with something small, the saddlebags will answer with something even smaller, but the right thing. You turn the kettle on again, and hear the water begin to speak, first whispering, then murmuring, then bubbling like an old man telling an old story. In this part of the world, boiling water is the cheapest, easiest, and most patient medicine. You know the drill: filter first, boil later, let cool before touching. Everything else, alcohol, iodine, ointment, is more complicated than water, while water only requires fire and someone who is willing to watch until the kettle lid wants to jump. You start with the ugly but effective step, filtering. Your indigo triangular scarf, yesterday's residency, is now a filter. You fold it in four, tie it around the mouth of the tin pot, and pour the pond water through a slow-flowing time string. Fine sand and unnameable things get stuck. The clearer parts go into the coffee pot. If the muddy water is thicker than you remember, you add a pinch of clean wood ash. The alkali helps the fine particles settle, and let it think for 10 minutes. Quirky tidbits take a turn. Sometimes you slice a nopal leaf and stir it a few times. Its sticky sap gathers the grit into a raft, and the water clears up as if to repair itself. It's the fire's turn to speak. You relight the coals, positioning the kettle so that the bottom absorbs the heat evenly. The highlands boil water at a lower temperature than the plains, so you count not by degree F but by a murmuring song. Let the water bubble loudly for a long time, long enough for the heat to get to its core. You don't play with time. Mainstream fact, neat as a knot, in the 19th century, emigrant guidebooks on the Oregon Trail recommended boiling drinking and cooking water in rivers rumored to be plagued. Folk wisdom and military supply manuals both considered rolling boils to be safe before pouring it on a person or wound. At high altitude, they advise, let it last longer than a sigh. It sounds poetic, it's tiring to do, but it's true. The kettle begins to sing. The lid vibrates like an old man's knees to music. You use small iron tongs, boiled last time, to lift the kettle out and place it on a clean stone. This is the tricky part. The water is very hot. The wound is very proud. You want the right temperature, not burning, not cold. Your trick is your wrist. Dip a clean fingertip into the drop of water on the lid. If it feels as warm as baby milk, warm but not scalding, then it's time. Joke one giggles. Wrist doctor, hello? In a place without a thermometer, the wrist is a trustworthy laboratory. You wash your hands first, with alkaline soap and warm water, scrubbing your nails and between your fingers, and then let them air dry. The tools have already been bathed in alcohol and boiled. Now for the wound. You pour warm water in a small stream, just far enough away to wash away the fine dust without being too harsh. No poking, no pouring like hail, just a stream that knows how to say, please. You imagine the dirty edges breaking up like a line of ants. If you want to pamper your skin, you mix a pinch of clean salt, boiled with water, into a diluted salt water, about as salty as a drop of sweat, so that it doesn't sting like a scolding dot on windless nights. You can set up a makeshift irrigator, punch a small hole in the bottom of a clean tin can, plug it with a wooden stick, pour in warm, boiling water, pulling the stick out, as gently as if you were ripping a sentence out of your mouth, so that the stream flows evenly to wash the edges of the wound. Homemade, but polite. If necessary, use an empty, boiled feather tube as a dropper for hidden spots. In this part of the world, natural things are ready to change jobs if you know how to ask for help at the right time. The question often comes when your hands are tired. How long is enough? You answer the way people without clocks do. After the water has boiled vigorously, let it boil for a few more minutes, long enough for the guilt in the water to disappear. Historians still debate whether frontiersmen understood germs in the scientific sense or just knew that boiling makes you sick. But diaries, letters from home, and army handbooks all allude to the same fact. Boiling longer beats impatience, at least. Through a song, makes stomachs calmer and the camp coughs less frequent. You remember the tavern tales. People swear by dropping a real silver coin into their canteens to make the water. Kinder, silver is supposed to be antiseptic. Some even throw horseshoes into the coffee pot to give the horses a taste of home, they say. You smile, keeping your faith polite, but you trust what you see. Filter, boil, warm, rinse, dry, ice. The rest belongs to the night and after dinner stories. The wash is over without the iodine. You put white lint on, bandage it snugly, try to move it to make sure you don't tie it so tight that your fingers file a complaint. When you're not cleaning the wound, boiling water has other uses: wiping dishes, rinsing cups, washing towels. In the camp, a pot of boiling water is a clean bank that everyone can draw from. You divide it up, half for the medics, half for the coffee pot, and some in a bottle to wash your face before riding tomorrow morning. You don't forget about the burn. More than once you've seen someone impatiently dump water straight off the fire onto their skin, and the skin, sensitive as it is, reacts like someone has pulled a curtain too hard. So you restrain yourself by waiting a short time, letting the steam cool down. Joke 2 says quietly, "Waiting for water to cool is like waiting for a horse to stop heaving. Both require 5 breaths." You listen to yourself, counting silently to the sound of crickets. When the water has cooled, pour the remainder into a clean bottle, wrap it in oilcloth, and keep it in your saddlebag. On hot sunny days, it will save you from a burning throat. On rainy nights, it will serve as a reminder that tomorrow will not begin with a cough. With filtered, boiled water, you can add a little lemon powder, if you have any left, to offset the mild saltiness, helping to clear your head when the sun is acting up. Think of the ox cart teams that told plague stories along the Platte River. We washed our hands with boiling water, drank boiling water, and cooked everything until the neighbors complained about the smell. True or exaggerated, the lesson is there. Good water makes good night. Another mainstream fact, as clear as a meteor: military posts and many large farms established mandatory boiling water practices during the epidemic season. Soldiers, cooks, and blacksmiths all boiled before brewing. When the practice is repeated enough nights, it becomes an unwritten rule that is more durable than written documents. You don't deify boiling water. It doesn't heal broken bones or replace antibiotics that haven't been invented yet. But it gives you a clean base for everything else to stick to. It makes alcohol less of a chore, iodine less of a dab, ointment less of a battle with mud. It also teaches you rhythm: wait, test, rinse, let dry. In a land where everyone wants to be fast, water teaches slowly. Before wrapping the items, you shine the firelight through the kettle, and you see a thin layer of residue on the bottom like the history of the day. You wash the kettle with warm boiling water. Don't use cold water right away so the kettle doesn't startle, and turn it upside down on a clean stone to dry. A small habit, as strong as an old rain. Joke 3 pokes his head in. The kettle sniffs, saying, "Taking a break is also a medical measure." The wind shifts, carrying the smell of damp earth from the creek. The calves turn. You check the tape again, give it a little push. It doesn't sting, so the lid on the boiling water lesson is properly closed. Historians still debate whether the West learned modern hygiene from books, from traveling doctors, or from its own fires. You know, on a night like this, the fires are the most devoted teachers. They turn stupid water into an unlabeled, but effective medicine. You pull the covers up, setting the pre-boiled water bottle beside you like a little sentinel. The coffee pot is silent, but the warmth is enough to soothe your hands. A few stars are just coming out in the sky, like tiny corks stuck in velvet. You smile at the coincidence. The thing that keeps the sky bright is the same thing you used to keep you wound. Breathing. It all seems oddly appropriate. You say goodnight, to the warmth, to the water, to yourself, and let yourself drift off to sleep without any prescription label. You pour more hot water from the kettle, the warm metallic smell, the coffee smell just receding, and open the lid of the small medicine box as if opening a thick chapter of a book with the smell of an old hospital. The 3 main characters of the evening lie there, each with its own personality: the white bottle of alcohol pretending to be strong like wine but not drunk, The reddish-brown bottle of iodine as serious as a schoolteacher. The packet of carbolic, phenol, powder, silent but easy to burn your hand. You place all three on the clean cloth, looking at them like three cards that must be played at the right time to win. Whiskey, the noisy cousin, jumps in first. In bars, it smooths the conversation. In first aid, it's only useful if you know how to hold your tongue. Cleaning instruments with a strong shot of whiskey might be considered polite, but pouring it directly into a wound will only make the skin scream and not necessarily clean. The saving grace lies in the alcohol content. Below about 60%, the antiseptic power is weak. The common frontier rarely reaches the trustworthy threshold. So you use whiskey like a jovial relative. Invite him to stand aside, don't let him make long speeches. A drop to wipe a knife is fine, a sip to calm the nerves is fine, but the main antiseptic should be left to rubbing alcohol or iodine. You're used to it, in this part of the world. Making a fuss rarely means doing well. Gentle joke number 1. The glass makes you look like a resident, you say. Thanks, but I'm off duty today. Now for the alcohol. Alcohol is clean, straightforward, and doesn't like to be flashy. You dab a little on a cloth, wipe around the edges of the wound, don't pour it in too much, lest the tissue gets spooked, and feel the sensible burn. The doing it right kind of pain. Mainstream fact, neat as a handkerchief knot. In the 19th century, alcohol and spirits were familiar antiseptics on ships, in military hospitals, and in pharmacies. In high enough concentrations, they killed more stubborn germs than the temper of the wind. But alcohol also strips moisture. If overused, chapped skin will complain as much as a saddle that's been rubbed all day. So you wipe around the outside, let it dry, then switch to warm water and gently wash the inside of the wound. Most minor scrapes need that, plus a clean bandage. Iodine. The color of autumn appears like a signature. A thin layer of paint around the edges of the skin helps to set a boundary for germs, like sprinkling dry rice husks around your sleeping area to keep the mud from stirring. Tincture of iodine became popular in many drugstore towns in the late 19th century. Traveling doctors would paint iodine on the skin before stitching it up, turning its smell into the soundtrack of progress. You dab it gently with the tip of a cotton swab, avoiding hard rubbing and not pouring it deep into exposed tissue. Just outline, not paint. The skin turns brown, as if it's been dipped in molasses. That's fine. It reminds you of a good deed done today. Gentle joke number 2. The finger demands a brown night. Title. You grant it, with instructions, wash it gently tomorrow, don't play in the mud. Then there was phenol, carbolic acid, that quiet, hard-to-please guest. In the 1860s, Joseph Lister introduced the term, antisepsis, to phenol surgery. Word of it traveled the world in newspapers and by storytelling salesmen. In this part of the world, phenol was sometimes available as a powder or a weak solution. In the right dose it was useful, but in excess it was like fire, a scarred box office. You diluted it according to learned habits. Use only a low concentration to clean around unpleasant skin. Don't pour it into a wound. Don't inhale it close to your nose. Don't put it near your eyes. Phenol wasn't for relieving boredom. It was a tough overseer. Historians still debate whether frontiersmen really practiced Listerian-style antiseptics or relied more on boiling water, alcohol, and courage. Diaries and receipts paint a patchy picture. Near the medicine, the scent of iodine and phenol prevailed. Far away, the smell of boiling water prevailed. You also learn a few safety stops. Avoid pouring anything too hard on a deep puncture wound. A tight, draining area will cry silently. Instead, wash with clean, warm water, let it dry, place a small wick, if drainage is needed, and let daylight decide your next move. Avoid phenol on thin, sensitive areas. Avoid heavy-handed iodine over large areas. Your skin will be angry, and you won't sleep. Avoid wetting a bandage with hard liquor. The smell is great, but healing tissue needs more peace and quiet than a party. Quirky tidbit for the pocket. Some old handbooks suggested spraying a solution of carbolic around the work area, modeled after Lister's carbolic sprayer, a giant brass insect that blew polite tear gas. You didn't have one in the camps, but you could sometimes smell the faint scent of phenol around the tools of an experimental midwife or blacksmith. It was both reassuring and solemn. Don't forget the most powerful thing: procedure. Wash your hands with soap, rinse the wound with properly cooled warm water, dry, disinfect lightly around the edges, alcohol or iodine, let it breathe a bit, then bandage it cleanly. When you need to sew, boil the needle, wipe your hands, burn the wax thread to make it neat, and, if necessary, apply iodine around the skin before putting in, sparingly and evenly. Most scrapes just require pressure and patience. Apply ointment after it's dry, not under a wet bandage. Here, cleanliness is the strategy, and disinfection is the strategic reserve. Getting on the field at the right moment wins the game. Another tricky part is the nose. Iodine smells like a hospital. Phenol is as acrid as freshly cut wood. If the night is quiet, the smell sticks in the memory as long as an unpaved road. Your little trick: open some warm towels, boiled water. Put them on your face for a few breaths before working. The warm, clean smell soothes the mind. When you're done, take a sip of warm water, wash your hands again. The brain understands. It's safe. Gentle joke number 3. The warm towel is listed under the title. Fragrance Coordinator. You sign, paid in steam. You look back at the trio. Whiskey is invited to sit in the audience. Alcohol holds a broom to sweep the edge of the stage. Iodine signs the minutes. Phenol stands in the wings to say the necessary words and then retreats. If tomorrow the wound gets redder, hotter, or throbs with the heartbeat, you know the rule. Stop. Confident. Switch to finding someone. In a sparsely populated area, knowing when to stop is also a skill. On the corrugated iron surface, the firelight makes the iodine bottle glow like amber. The alcohol is clear as a promise. The phenol package is silent as a secret. You fold the cloth, put away each item. The click of the lid sounds like a well-placed full stop. The wind changes its tone, the distant cymbals jingle again. You look at the tape. Dry, impervious. Your hands no longer sting. Tonight you don't fight with germs, you just build them a sensible fence, then close the gate. Tomorrow, in town, someone may argue about the origin of the word saloon, or laugh at the sign, Sal-O-N, for missing a letter, and you will remember and forget. Remember that boiling water, alcohol, iodine, phenol each have their own time. Forget the superfluous movements. In this part of the world, the most important thing is to make the night gentle, and tomorrow morning, when the rains pull your fingers again, you will be able to touch life without it wincing. Time to bandage, the silent but decisive part. You pull the indigo spare shirt out of the bag, hearing the fabric creak like a horse clearing its throat. Shirts aren't just for wearing around here, they're a storehouse of bandages waiting for a new job. You fold the shirt, choose the cleanest spot, and tear along the fibers. The crackling is even and neat. The new edges are as fuzzy as grass after a rainstorm. You quickly run your fingers through the flame to shrink the fibers and reduce the dust. One strip, then two, and roll it into a small, sturdy, unpretentious bandage. First rule: direct pressure. You place the white lint, the obedient little cloud, from last night, on the exact spot where the blood is seeping, and press it with a clean palm. No peeking, no removing it with each heartbeat, just let time do its work in silence. You count with a silent waltz, 3 soothing beats, or with a sigh from the coffee pot. Blood respects patience. If the first lint soaks, you don't remove it. You pile a second on top, layered like shingles so that the clot doesn't get pulled away out of curiosity. When the blood is willing, you use a strip of shirt as a pressure bandage. Wrap it in a spiral, evenly, each round overlapping the previous half of the body like a pillow. Apply moderate pressure, not too tight. You can still fit 2 fingers under the bandage. The tip of the finger far from the wound is still warm and pink after 2 breaths. You look at the nail, press lightly, release. The pink returns as a good answer. If the tip of the finger turns pale, cold, numb, you loosen the bandage like loosening the reins for a horse to breathe. Joke 1 tiptoes. The bandage whispers, "I want to be a foreman." You laugh. "Okay, but the work hours are just enough, not all in dot." Mainstream fact, straight as a thread, during the American Civil War, the Manual of Military Surgery taught military and civilian medics 3 steps to bleeding: direct pressure, elevation, and tourniquet use only when necessary. Field doctors took note of the dangers of prolonged tourniquet use, ischemic gangrene, and advised timing and loosening when possible. These rules drifted with demobilized soldiers to the prairie, becoming a habit that didn't need a book: pressure, elevation, wrap, observe. You lift your hand to check the edge of the tape. Clean, dry, no rust. Good. Now comes the pressure button, the shiny coin from the tin. You place one right on the lint, under the tape, at the spot where it craves the most compression. The coin distributes the pressure like a fair showman, so that each turn doesn't have to carry the whole show. On the bumpy road, the pressure button keeps things from pouting. Joke 2 rolls gently. The coin demands a pressure medal, which you nod and grant on the spot. You lift the injured arm slightly, resting it on a saddle or rolled saddlebag. Just raise it a little higher than the heart, and the pulse will be less aggressive. If the wound is on the leg, you put a saddlebag or a bundle of hay underneath. Nature knows how to make a pillow too. A triangular handkerchief, the talented, resident doctor, is tied into a sling to support the arm, and knotted at the nape of the neck so that the string does not rub against the neck. In motion, immobility is a virtue. When there is less shaking, the blood has less reason to continue riding. What about the tourniquet? You look at the stick, the saddle strap, and shake your head. No need for force tonight. You review anyway, because knowledge is something to remember when you don't need it. Tourniquets are only used when the squirt is bright red like cut grass, a sign of an artery, or when it's so firm that local pressure, elevation, and compression are ineffective. Tie the tourniquet an arm's breadth above the wound, rotate it slowly with a windlass, stick until the blood stops, mark the time with charcoal on the skin, and loosen it every few moments to check if it's safe. The tourniquet was never a medal. It was an apology for a moment of helplessness. Historians still debate whether cowboys and frontiersmen were ever properly trained in tourniquets or whether the old adage, "too tight, too long," caused more harm than good. Diaries and local newspapers are mixed. Some saved lives, others lost limbs. Here's a little tip. Remove rings and bracelets before you bandage. A swollen finger will turn jewelry into a handcuff. Line the pressure points with saddle felt or folded cloth so the strap doesn't the skin. End the bandage with a flat knot, tucked away where it won't rub against tendons. Tonight, the niceties are in the seemingly boring details. There are odd things like nosebleeds. You hate that feeling more than a wet slope. The recipe: sit up straight, lean forward slightly, pinch the soft part of your nose below the bridge. Breathe through your mouth. A cool cloth on the back of your neck is just for peace of mind. The essential thing is to count a song. Don't tilt your head back. Don't let the blood choose the throat as its path. If you have alum powder, the kind men use to shave, sprinkle it lightly on the edges of your nose to help constrict the blood vessels. But be careful, use a little, because the skin doesn't like to be squeezed too much. A bleeding head has its own tricks. Wrap the bandage around the head like a scarf, tie a knot on the forehead or back of the neck, and insert a pressure plug of a small roll of cloth or a cloth-wrapped coin right over the bleeding spot. The scalp is rich in blood vessels, and the bleeding is like a long story, but it responds to pressure very quickly. You tie the bandage so that the ear can still breathe. Your sleep at night will thank you. Some people prefer natural astringents. You've seen witch hazel, pepper, even coffee grounds sprinkled on scrapes to stop rust. Quirky tidbits. Alum was once the styptic pen of barbershops, traveling in saddlebags like a wise old man. And pepper was famous for making a sore person forget to breathe properly. Tonight you're going the clean route: pressure, lift, bandage, monitor, less spice, more gentleness. You make a little checklist. Write it in charcoal on the lid of the tin. 10 minutes of pressure. Check. Wrap. Lift. Check finger. Record the time. If it seeps through, add another layer. Don't peel off the old layer unless you have to wash it all over because it's dirty. If it leaks again after moving, go back to step 1. Don't get mad. Blood has an ego, but it respects the steadfast. Joke 3 yawns. The rap declares conditional autonomy. And you nod, provided the finger stays pink. You remember the story of the rice husk sprinkled around your sleeping area. Now, the compression bandage is also a barrier, not against the wind, but against the sloppiness of the current. You listen to the bandage, talk, no hiss of skin being too tight, no heartbeat against the towel, just the sound of grass, soft, steady, gentle. Everything in place, with the right pressure. Historians still debate whether the first aid courses of St. John Ambulance or the Red Cross in the late 19th century crept into the backcountry with handkerchief wrapping manuals and posters, or whether cowboys mostly learned their craft from firesides and battlefields. You look at the ribbon from your shirt and know your own answer. Most of it was learned by hand, your own hand, on a night like tonight. You adjust the knot, lift your arm into the sling, try to shift on the blanket. The pain turns from sharp to dull, the faint sound of something that has been comma punctuated. The coffee pot beside you exhales a gentle breath, like a night watchman changing shifts. Outside, the wind brushes the sage, leaving a clean smell like freshly laundered towels. Inside, the bandages fulfill their promise, keeping the blood in place, giving the skin time to mend. You write a final line on the lid of the box. Change bandage tomorrow morning. Then you push the box into the deep compartment, placing the remaining coins beside it like 2 little sentries. The rehearsal night is silent again, like the sound of sawdust mixed with eggshells in a tavern, a soft background that only the floor sweeper truly understands. You pull the blanket up to your shoulders, let your shoulders drop, and know that although the doctor is far away, the shirt has learned to be the doctor near. The ready-made, when used properly, suddenly becomes luxurious. You sit up as the pain changes its tone, no longer a sharp stabbing, but a bone-joint grunt. Don't joke around, man. A slip on the gravel this afternoon has left your ankle swollen like a loaf of fresh bread. Every time you try to stand, the bread protests with a bunch of proverbs. In this part of the world, calling a doctor means leaving the job to the galaxy. So what you have are hay, a few listening twigs, a saddle strap, and the memory of the homemade class you took around the fire. Splint, that's the word you need. Also the attitude, fixed, soft, no useless bravado. You start with the simplest thing: look, touch, ask. You gently massage around the ankle, avoiding the most swollen part. The skin is still warm, the foot can still wiggle its toes. The nail presses white and then pink after 2 breaths. Good, the pulse is not panicking. You pull out your familiar indigo triangular scarf, fold it flat, and lay it out. The scarf again applies for the position of orthopedic assistant. Joke 1. A long mesquite branch pokes its head into the pile, dryly saying, "I would like to be promoted to spare bone." You smile. Okay, but make sure it's properly padded. The splint you choose should be straight, sturdy, and a little longer than the painful joints so that it is upper and lower in the same position. You wrap the splint with a lining, a clean wool sock, a piece of felt from a saddle, or a thick folded old shirt, anything that turns hardwood into a polite hand. Then you place the splint on either side of the ankle, a guard on each side, and use a strip of cloth from a shirt, learned the trade last night, to wrap it in a spiral, ankle, over heel, up calf, change direction, down ankle again. Each turn overlaps the previous half, using moderate pressure. Remember the rule of the unknown teacher. Stabilize the joint above and below. Mainstream fact. As early as the Civil War, the Manual of Military Surgery instructed soldiers and ambulance drivers to splint a broken joint with a wooden stick, board, or stick, immobilizing both joints adjacent to the wound before moving. Later, St. John Ambulance documents, late 19th century, popularized the picture of a triangular bandage wrapped around an arm or leg so that anyone could do it. Literate or not, the rule of thumb is to keep your knees from hurting. You check the pulse in the toe, press and release, the pink returns. The touch is still clear, warm. If the bandage is too tight, the skin will be gray and cold. You loosen it a little, breathe out, and the ankle breathes with it. The sling for the hand is familiar to everyone. For the foot, the sling is the saddlebag's shoulder strap. You tie the two ends of the saddle strap together to form a soft hook, hang the foot on the saddle when riding slowly to rest it. Or simply put a bundle of hay under the heel when lying down. Less vibration, less pain, order is medicine. Straight branches aren't always available. You look around and think of the thin planks from a crate, or the wooden shingle roof. Two parallel planks, lined with cloth and wrapped in bandages, make a twin brace. If you only have one belt, you use a cravat, turn the cloth into a wide strap, tie a flat knot in the least stressed area. Stirrup leather is great, wide, thick, doesn't cut into the skin like a small strap. Joke 2. The belt is stern like a disciplinarian. I'm here to keep you in place, not to show off. You nod, and it does its job. Splinting the arm follows the same pattern. If you have a splinted wrist, use a splint from the elbow to the hand. Place a small roll of cloth in the palm of the hand to prevent flat bandages from making the fingers stiff as boards. Once wrapped, drape the entire forearm in a sling, a triangular towel tied behind the neck, the edge of the towel hugging the elbow like a friendly arm. If you suspect a fracture in the forearm, add a swathe, a wide strip of cloth wrapped around the torso, holding the arm close to the chest like a sleeping baby, to reduce sway. For a sprained shoulder, the sling and swathe are a matching pair, like a kettle and coffee. Historians still debate whether cowboys learned splinting techniques more from their youthful battlefield experiences, from camp midwives and blacksmiths, or from St. John's early lifeguard classes that crept into the backcountry via posters and notebooks. Diaries sometimes mention bandage S-march, German-style triangular scarf, while others simply mention wrapping with a shawl and tying with rope. In short, the knowledge came from the fire and the storyteller, not necessarily from the classroom. Remind yourself of the no-nos. Don't try to straighten a sprain without a clear deformity and a shaky hand. The body hates drama. Don't use a tourniquet to make sure. Tourniquets are for spurting arterial blood and when other methods have failed. Don't tie with wet rawhide. Quirky tidbit of the night. Wet rawhide shrinks when dry like the temper of March, turning the splint into a strangulation. An old bully once warned you with a single phrase. Rawhide holds grudges. Don't use thin cords either. Concentrated pressure will draw a record on the skin that you don't want to keep as a souvenir. You add a small presser to the soft, leaky spot, a coin wrapped in cloth placed in the right place, under the bandage, to keep the swollen bread still. When you have to move, try standing on the heel of the good foot, using the stick as a tripod, walking slowly as if counting stars. If you must ride, you turn the stirrup on the sore foot, put the sore foot on the soft saddle pad, and let it ride on cotton instead of gravel. Slowing down is merciful. Boots also have a specialty. If the ankle is moderately swollen, you can stuff soft cotton into the boot collar, tie the laces just enough. The boot becomes a comfortable round splint. Joke 3. The boot turns up. Please sign the title Honorary Orthopedist. You sign with a limp nod. If you suspect a long bone fracture in the thigh, a rare but serious occurrence, another lesson opens up. You don't have a Thomas splint, invented in 1875, popular until World War II, but you do have 2 sturdy poles, shovel handles, 10 poles, wide bandages, and plenty of padding. Splint from armpit to ankle on the outside, from groin to ankle on the inside. Thick padding at ankle, knee, groin. 7-point binding, ankle, above ankle, below knee, above knee, mid-thigh, groin, at hip. Move? Only if absolutely necessary, and as slowly as your grandfather's handwriting. This is the time to call a neighbor, borrow a stretcher, or settle for a night under the stars. Another little trick of the peasants: use flour mixed with water to make a paste, soak it in cloth, wrap it around the splint so that when it dries it becomes as hard as a crust of bread, a kind of poor cast. Don't apply it directly to the skin. The paste is to harden the outer surface, the skin needs to breathe. Some people in the past also mixed egg whites with sugar to make a hardener. Try it once and learn the lesson. It works but is as sticky as a drunken promise. So you keep your loyalty to wood, cloth, rope, patience. You check the pulse and sensation again, press the nail, feel for warmth, ask for numbness. You write the time on charcoal on the edge of the bandage. Splint at, to know when to loosen it. The night is wide, and the memory sometimes likes to play. A sip of warm water, boiled as in the old lesson, helps you remember that the body likes a rhythm. So does the splint. Check every hour, change the resting position every few hours. But don't break the structure. I in the corner of the tent, a piece of dried eggshell. You used to mix it into sawdust to soften the floor, is a gentle reminder. The little things keep order. A splint is only a temporary declaration of order to the bones. The rest is time and cleanliness. Tomorrow, if the swelling increases, the pain lasts through the night, or the deformity becomes obvious, you know to take the body to someone with glasses, in town, or to the midwife with blue eyes and warm hands. Historians still debate whether that helpline relied more on doctors with degrees or on a network of skilled women. Kitchen logs and food bills favor women, but a carriage with a doctor often appears when needed. You add a cushion to the support point, pull up the blanket, and put your feet on the saddlebags a little higher than your heart. The wind blows gently through the tent, no longer shaking like before. The embers are red like late ripened fruit. You listen. There is no more knocking of the pulse on the ice, only the step doing its familiar work, lulling you with the sound of the gentle wind. In that quiet, you hear again the familiar rhythm of the past few nights. Boil, wash, ice, splint, record the time. There are no fireworks, only order. And order, in this region, is the kindness that costs the least. Before you close your eyes, you tell your tools like a horse in the stable. Branches, don't rub. Ropes, don't be proud. Bandages, don't be loose. You smile because you know they will listen, because you heard them first. Tomorrow morning, as the sun draws long splint shadows across the grass, you will try walking with a newly promoted cane. Slowly. No one grades the speed of a healing person. Only the sky grades patience, and tonight you turned in your paper on time. The oil lamp hanging on the tent pegs lets out a honey yellow sigh, and you lay your sewing kit under its glow as if spreading out a chessboard whose squares are calm. The sore on your hand is calmed by the bandage, but the skin edges are clean and neat, and whisper that if you pull them together soon, the wound will be less painful later. In this region, sewing is not a heroic act, it is a courtesy between the two skin edges. You look, touch, and wait half a minute for the "want to do it now" to quiet down. What needs to be sewn? Straight, clean, not too deep lacerations, less than a few hours old. What should be left alone? Deep puncture wounds, muddy edges, animal teeth, or swollen areas like recently trampled grass. Most nights, leaving alone is a kind of sewing with time. You begin with a ritual you know by heart. Wash your hands thoroughly with lye soap and warm water. Wash until your nails shine shyly. Dry in the cool air. Needles, scissors, tweezers, boiled in a kettle and removed with clean iron tongs. Linen thread waxed to slide over the skin like a request. You dab iodine thinly around the edges, for the outline, not the painting, and lay the garment on a clean cloth. Joke one speaks, the thread vibrates like a string, murmuring, "If I lose my job, let me be a violin." You coax it. "Tonight, just be a connecting piece." You take out a curved needle, an old silk sewing needle that you've sharpened to make it look presentable, and thread a short piece of thread, enough for just a few stitches, because long threads are a way to show off your ability to tie knots in anything. You test the curve of the needle under the lamp, warming it in the air to calm your shaking. The edges of the wound are dry on the surface from the cleaning. You lift them sparingly with tweezers, place a small cloud of lint underneath to catch any excess droplets, and take a deep breath. The first stitch is a foundation stitch, a simple interrupted stitch, a stitch anyone can learn at the fire. You insert the needle a pea-sized distance from the edge of the skin on one side, through the skin to the lower layer, emerge at the center of the wound, and then go to the opposite edge, the same distance. The needle moves like a small fish that knows how to keep its distance, not to go too deep into the muscle. You pull the thread until the edges touch like two neighbors nodding to each other, then tie a knot, one loop, then the opposite loop, then another loop, a square, flat knot, lying to one side so it doesn't pinch. Cut the excess thread as short as a fingernail. You check, the edge forms a slight bridge, not a small hillock, nor a depression. The first stitch is the conductor. The following stitches are just imitations. Mainstream fact, unveiled at the right time. The 19th century was the era of catgut, a suture made from treated sheep intestines, attractive because it dissolves in the body. Joseph Lister popularized the practice of carbolizing, soaking in phenol, to disinfect the thread. Silver and medical silk were also used for durable ties. Out in the fields, where industrial catgut was as rare as summer rain, diaries and stories record all sorts of substitutes: boiled linen thread, sewing silk, even boiled horsehair for scalp wounds, smooth, clean, less irritating. You slide your hand through a nearby ponytail and smile. "No need tonight, you can sleep." You place the second and third stitches, equally spaced, like sewing the mouth of a small bag, leaving a gap for tomorrow's cleaning fluid to squeeze through if desired. You avoid pressing so hard that the skin turns pale. Blood needs a small path to carry good news. With long stitches, you anchor the two ends first and then gradually fill in the middle, so that the edges don't deviate. If the edges are thick, a horizontal mattress stitch sometimes helps to brace the force evenly without creating grooves. But at the stove, simple interrupted is the easiest song to catch the breath of. Quirky tidbits popped out like sparks. Some used a kerosene lamp chimney, a curved piece of glass, as a magnifying glass, tilted to see the thread more clearly. Others put a silver thimble on their index finger, which served as a needle pusher and gave a professional feel. One blacksmith even tied a blue thread to make it easier to see on tan skin. At night, anything that made the eyes less likely to squint was worth a sip of coffee. Historians still argue whether frontiersmen sutured too much for their own good, sealing up filth that allowed infection to lurk, or did the opposite, sutured too little, left the wound open, and accepted a large, safe scar. Civil War medical manuals often recommended leaving the wound open, washing it repeatedly, and then delayed primary closure after a few days if all went well. Later Listerine doctors advocated early closure when the surgical field was clean. In your field, you choose a compromise between the two schools: suture when clean and early, avoid when in doubt, and always leave a small drain, a sterile cotton wick, if there is a sign of recalcitrant exudate. You pause, leaning back so the kerosene lamp doesn't shine directly into your eyes. The smell of iodine and beeswax mixes with the smell of saddle leather, creating a hospital soundtrack of the step. You look at the first button and give a tiny nod. The button is flat and unassuming, just the kind of person you like to be around. Joke 2 is cautious. The button asks for a promotion to Captain of the Fasteners. You promote him immediately, but with the stipulation: Captain of the Fasteners must not boast. After the stitches are complete, you gently wash the surrounding skin with warm water to wash away the excess iodine, pat dry, apply a layer of clean lint, and then wrap it with a light pressure bandage. You write the number of stitches on the lid of the box with charcoal, along with the day and night. Stitches, 5 stitches. The stitch removal schedule lives in your memory, but you like to have a secretary, fingers 7 to 10 days. Elbows or knees, places that move a lot, 10 to 14 days. Faces, if any, are faster, 3 to 5 days, so the scar doesn't show. On grass and bushes, you add a road bump factor. You can add a day or 2, as long as the wound is smooth, not red, not hot. Don't forget the most important part: know when not to sew. Animal teeth, dirty areas that haven't been cleaned thoroughly, deep punctures with sharp objects, all fall into the leave it alone category. Wash, wick, bandage, watch. Stitching a hole shut is inviting trouble. For large, clean lacerations with high-tension areas, knee, elbow, share the load with a cravat for a few days before asking for the stitches to be superhuman. If the lip is hot and swollen in the morning, throbbing with pain, or oozing a cloudy fluid, the stitches will accept their temporary role, cut them off, open them up to breathe, wash them again, and seek help from a skilled person when possible. You look at the needle and thread and think of the long journey from the European operating room to your hearth. Another mainstream fact, popping up like the rattle of a kettle lid: 1879, Arnold's prototype autoclave appeared in Germany. But in the prairies, fire and kettle were the quotidian sterile room. Listers, carbolized, catgut was fashionable in hospitals. Here, pots of water and iodine did the heavy lifting, with the added discipline of not being sold in stores. Don't dirty what's just been cleaned. You add a layer of humor to loosen up your nerves. Put a small round piece of wood under your needle-holding wrist, turning it into a workbench to prevent shaking. Rest your elbow on the saddlebag, the all-purpose pillow that has been faithful since the first night, so that your stitches move like a stroll. The oil lamp is useful. You clean the glass chimney. The flame is less smoky, more even. Your shadow on the tent canvas looks like a doctor in a silhouette. Joke 3 leans in. The lamp demands co-authorship. You promise to give it an extra drop of oil. You look again at the stitched wound. The edges are closed. The skin around it is gentle, not tight, not weeping. You tell yourself like you would a young horse: change the bandage tomorrow, wash gently, avoid getting it wet, don't fiddle with the buttons, don't show off your achievements to the dust. You also have an emergency ticket ready in your head. If fever, if pain escalates, if the wound smells of trouble, put your ego aside, find someone, or lie still and wait until the neighbors come by in the morning. Outside, the wind changes its tone, carrying the scent of damp earth like a goodnight greeting. Inside the tent, the kerosene lamp flickers, the beeswax on the thread hardens, and the needles lie quietly in their boxes, like students who have just finished dictation. You pull the blanket back, place your bandaged hand on the roll of clothes as a pillow, and feel your heartbeat return to a calm rhythm. No fireworks, no spectators. Just two skins that have just signed a small peace agreement. Under the cautious light of the kerosene lamp, you whisper thanks for the lessons that walk with you along the way. Sew when clean, leave when doubtful, tie a knot flat, bandage lightly. Let time do its work. Here in the West, where all noise has the wind as its chorus, sewing is but a faint beat in the long song called good. You blow out the light, leaving a small red dot of coal in the stove like a star that has not yet been extinguished. The night, once again, learns to be gentle. You've just turned off the kerosene lamp when your memory brings up a disturbing anecdote. Someone once said, "Heat it until it's dry, like frying a cake." The phrase sounds crisp in the kitchen, but there's no non-stick pan on human skin. You sit up, pull the blanket off the coal stove to cool the fire, and laugh at yourself, just the right time to tell your competitive mind, don't turn a peaceful night into a smoky one. Cauterize, heat, burn, heat, sounds strong, but it's a desperate measure for fewer situations than you think. Most of the time, fire is the kettle's best friend, not the skin's healer. You start with the kind question. What do I want to achieve? If it's stopping bleeding, you've got direct pressure, elevation, and compression, three gentler, less demanding things. If it's antiseptics, you've got boiling water, alcohol, iodine, cleaning techniques that don't leave fresh burns. And if it's closing wounds, you've learned to suture, simple stitches, flat plugs, light bandages. Heat is like calling in artillery when the wooden fence is high enough. Joke 1 is cautious. Yesterday's splint shakes its head. Don't make me a spit. Mainstream fact, as calm as the sound of a kettle. By the second half of the 19th century, in the proper operating room, doctors preferred to use hemostat and catgut to stop bleeding rather than red-hot iron, a triumph of cold but precise, over hot but vague. Cautery, electricity, or hot coals still existed for a few specific purposes: burning away lumps of flesh, liquefying diseased tissue, puncturing small oozes. But it was no longer the cure-all it had been in the old days. The news traveled slowly across the steppe, but eventually it arrived, in the scent of iodine, hemostat, and the pocketbooks of a few traveling doctors. You recall a few situations where people often do foolish things. First is the legend of pouring gunpowder and lighting it. You heard it at the bar. Joe once poured black powder into a wound, lit it, and rode like the wind the next morning. You smile. Black powder makes an ugly burn. Ash and sulfur salts go straight into the tissue. The pain speaks in chorus. And the only thing certain is the unteachable scar. Joe can run fast, but he might be running away from the burning smell of his mistake. What about heating the blade until it's red and then applying it? A new burn on top of an old one, turning one problem into two. Skin is polite. Don't make it converse in fire when it needs to whisper in warm water. You remember a small, right item, a silver nitrate or styptic pencil from a barber. Quirky tidbits have charm. The little gray pen dabs at the tiny cuts of a shave, astringing the veins with a gentle chemical reaction. It's not a torch, it's a reminder of enough. In some towns, it sits alongside the razor and the hot towel as a household item. To it, cautery is a dab, not a flamenco. Historians still debate whether frontiersmen actually used heat as much as the legends say, or whether it was largely tavern house hype. Blacksmiths' and midwives' diaries sometimes tell of applying hot irons to geysers when all else failed, but many pages are devoted to pressure, ice, rest, waiting for the dawn to bring in skilled hands. Both types of memories coexist, partly because of the distance, partly because the narrators preferred the fire to a warm towel. You said a few. Stop at the right time. Rules like milestones on the trail. If there is no bright red spurt of blood, no knocking of the pulse, stick with pressure, ice, lifting. Fire adds no value but justification for impatience. If the stain is dirty, a tooth bite, or a deep puncture, the goal is to drain and rinse thoroughly, not to seal the door with charcoal. Sealing a hole is inviting trouble. If the area to be treated is on the face, neck, genitals, don't heat. There, the scar is not just cosmetic. It is functional and airway. If you're alone in the middle of the night, your hands are shaking, the lighting is poor, don't turn your cooking utensils into surgical instruments. The thing that saves you in the dark is a good pressure bandage and waiting for dawn. You're also honest about a few minor exceptions. Tiny, bleeding papules in hard-to-bandage places? A dab of alum or silver, gentle, makes sense. Tiny capillaries on the scalp torn by a brush against a tree branch? Pressure is key. If they're still oozing by morning, the town doctor can dab on astringent chemicals, no blacksmithing required. Cauterization, if necessary, should be as precise as punctuation, not as stenciling a sentence. You remember what you saved last night, a kettle. Boiling water is your friend, even in the warm-up story. Knives, needles, and pliers need to be hot to clean? Boil and dry, done. You want something warm, without being hot-tempered. A warm towel placed around you will help your blood vessels contract rhythmically, making your soft tissues more obedient, and your hands less shaky. Joke 2 winks. The warm towel accepts the title of Goodwill Ambassador, and you add a drop of witch hazel essential oil if you have any left. You try to do the worst-case scenario. To put your mind at ease, blood spurting, bright red, pressure and elevation failing. These are the rare few minutes where heat is mentioned. But even then, the way forward is to apply a tourniquet properly, higher than the wound, timed, unloaded, immobilize the limb, and remove the person from the scene. Heat can only be spotted at the exposed pulse in a clean cut, with steady hands and good lighting. In other words, rarely a reasonable answer in a tent. You sigh, finding yourself freed from the impulse. If the scenario is that bad, you don't need a hero. You need neighbors and the sunrise. Another tricky one, burns. Burns are wounds that like to talk. They hurt longer, swell longer, and are more susceptible to infection than clean cuts, especially when the filth of fire, ash, tar, soot, comes to your uninvited party. You've learned how to treat a burn from a stove. Cool with clean water, cover with a soft cloth, let your skin breathe. There's no reason to give yourself a new burn on top of an old one in the hope of taking a shortcut. You write a few words on the lid of the tin. Do not heat, like a sign on a closed shop door. Then you add a soft sentence. If your hands itch, drink warm water. The urge to do something now is mostly a controlled thirst, not a medical need. As you pour the warm water, your throat calms, your hands quiet, and your head gives way to the process. The story is not yours alone. A midwife once told you the story of a skillful young man who held a knife blade over the fire, touching the edge of a cut on his forehead. The scar grew thick as a rope and forever occupied his wedding photo. Another blacksmith bragged about using a hot iron to warm his oozing knee. 7 nights of sleepless nights. And on the 8th morning had to ask the same midwife to drain the fluid, clean it, and start over again. Fire, it turns out, likes to be famous. Health likes to be quiet. You look at the kettle, your best friend of the past few nights, and see the familiar strategy: boil, wash, let it warm, bandage, splint, stitch when necessary, no tricks. Nothing heroic. But you can walk in the morning, sleep well, and there's no burning smell in your memory. Joke 3 passes like a gentle breeze, the coal stove requests. Non-medical leave, you sign it. Before lying down, make a small checklist in your head: stop bleeding, pressure, lift, bandage, coin wrap compress, check pink fingernails. Disinfectant, warm water, alcohol, thin edge iodine, dilute phenol only when clearly understood. Closure, simple suture if clean, otherwise leave open, wash, wick, close late. Absolutely do not pour gunpowder, heat a knife blade, or press hot iron against the skin. Find someone, if redness spreads, heat, pulsating pain, fever, or strange odor, leave the ego behind, ask for help. Outside, the steppe shifts, the wind blows in from the creek, bringing a cool dampness, like a giant warm blanket spread over the night. In here, the kettle is still warm, the ice is still dry, and the aggression has gone to sleep. You pull back the blanket, put your hand on the ice, feel the stillness of the pulse. Say, enough. There is no sizzle, only the murmur of steam. You smile. In this land of deprivation, sometimes the greatest skill is to refuse a tool that is too strong. You close your eyes, letting sleep pass you by like a herd of cattle crossing a stream, slow, steady, never treading water. Tomorrow, when the sun knocks on the tent door, your skin will be intact, without a trace of a hasty decision. And in your unwritten notebook, the entry for cauterize will be at the bottom, with a note: for the stove, not for the skin. You look down at the saddlebag, where bandages, stitches, and iodine have done their job, and then glance at the charcoal stove, which is smoldering like a warm cat. Tonight you need something else, a poultice. Not a miracle, but a kind of soft negotiation between the skin and the long day. Poultice, powder, leaf, root, warm just right, moisten just right, applied just right, covered just right to keep the moisture in while still allowing the wound to breathe. In this region, moderation is medicine. You start with the world's poorest pestle, the handle of a wooden spoon. In a tin bowl that has been rinsed with boiling water, you crush a handful of dark green plantain leaves you picked up from the edge of a ditch that afternoon. Plantain is rich in mucilage. Its slippery surface is like a good apology, which soothes, draws out fine dust, and relieves irritation. If you don't have any yarrow, achillea will do. The leaves are as thin as small saw blades, have a slightly bitter aroma, and were believed by the ancients to stop bleeding. You add a few drops of warm, boiled water to the bowl, and crush until the mixture is as thick as moist bread dough. Joke 1 tries to intervene. The spoon says, I graduated from a fast-track herbal medicine course. And you nod in agreement. Mainstream fact, as soothing as steam. 19th century cookbooks and domestic medicine on both sides of the Atlantic often recommended poultices of flaxseed meal, slippery elm, Ulmus rubra, warm bread and milk for use on swellings, boils, and abrasions. Many frontier families carried these in their toolboxes, and Civil War field manuals noted warm poultice as softening tissues, promoting drainage, before applying a clean bandage. In the West, where flaxseed was scarce, native leaves, plantwort, yarrow, wormwood, crushed willow bark, were substituted depending on the season and the instructor. You add a pinch of willow bark, if you have it, a rustic scent, an old story of pain and fever. Mixing, you test the temperature with your wrist, a test that has saved you from overdoing it many times. Warm as baby milk, no more. The skin is tired, it hates the heat. Spread a thin layer, about the thickness of 2 pennies. On a clean piece of lint, place it on the first night's scratch, which is now more docile, and cover it loosely with a strip of cloth, leaving a small opening for air and fluid to pass in and out. Place a cloth-wrapped coin on the outer edge as a gentle pressure plug, if the ooze is stubborn. The bandage is not a prison, it is a porch to keep out the wind. You remember the stuff in the kitchen chest, cheap, decent stuff. Flaxseed pounded in warm water, thick, sticky, moisturizing. Put on the swelling, cover with an oilcloth to keep the heat from going away too quickly. Elm bark smooth, soft, soothing thanks to its mucilage. Frontiersmen liked it because it didn't argue with the skin. And bread and milk. A piece of dry bread soaked in warm milk, squeezed out, and applied to the boil to encourage it to tell the truth. That is, to gather the pus in one place so it would be easier to open the way out tomorrow. Quirky tidbit, many farm hands liked onion poultice, soft roasted onions, pounded with a little fat, applied to the chest when coughing. The smell had its own opinion, but the whole farm knew the sick were being cared for that night. You smile. The kitchen and the medical staff were close cousins. Historians still argue whether the effectiveness of many folk poultices is due to the actual active ingredient, the mucilage of elm bark, the tannins of yarrow, the salicylate of willow, the permeability of honey, or to the effect of heat, moisture, rest, and a caring hand that does half the magic. There is also debate whether the settlers gave enough credit to the Aboriginal knowledge, who showed them plantain, mugwort, yucca, and how to cook witch hazel, or accidentally renamed the knowledge when they put it into English handbooks. At your stove, credit is given by habit. Who taught you, you say in your head, and then boil some more water as a thank you. You also have a better safe than sorry list. Comfort, symphytum, is a good example. Everyone praises its quick healing. Crushed leaves are soothing. The decoction of the rhizome is traditionally used for bone health. But you learn a new lesson. Don't apply it directly to a dirty open wound. Skin that heals too quickly can trap trouble underneath. There's also the matter of alkaloid toxicity to the liver if used internally. Arnica? Use only externally for bruises. Avoid open wounds. It's hot-tempered and can scald. Tobacco chewed and applied? You leave it in the pub talk section. Saliva is not an antiseptic. You've got boiling water and alcohol. What about bentonite? A thin, warm layer for insect bites. Temporary. But don't plug the wound with mud. Inviting the wrong person is bad. You mix up a poor batch of sugar grease, old honey in a small bottle. Honey is the granddaddy of osmotics. It pulls water away from bacteria. Mixed with a little granulated sugar, put on a gauze pad, like the sugar paste. Recipe later recorded by field doctors. Cover with lint bandage. Change daily so it doesn't turn into insect gum. The honey scent lessens the iodine smell in the tent. Your throat feels comforted. Joke 2 is delighted. An ant hiding somewhere is holding up a "Support the new method" banner. You laugh and pull the tarp tighter. The technique of applying is also a lesson in moderation. Don't apply too thickly. Heat is difficult to spread. Moisture is stagnant. Don't apply too thinly. The skin doesn't have time to hear the signal. Heat, warm, not hot. If your hands can handle it, then your skin can handle it. Time, 20 to 40 minutes each time if the purpose is to soften and draw out the fluid. With honey, sugar, olive bark, you can leave it on longer but have to check every few hours. Replace the application when the layer changes smell, changes color, or dries out, as enough gossip has been said. And always leave in escape route a small sterile cotton wick, placed at the low edge so the fluid has a way to escape. The outer bandage is not sealed like a powder container. You suddenly remember the midwife's lesson at the creek. Don't turn a wound into a greenhouse. Moisture is your friend. waterlogging is your enemy. Under the bandage, the skin should be as soft as the ground after a rainstorm, moist enough for grass to grow, not pooling water. Feel around. If it feels cold, slippery, pale, that's your skin's complaint. Unwrap it, let in the air, rinse it gently with warm water, reduce the time. If the edges are bright red, hot, and painful in rhythm, that's a red flag. Stop the bandage, switch to washing, bandaging, seeking someone. You make an extra batch of kitchen poultice, just in case. Warm bread and milk for the knee that's been swollen since the splint. It doesn't replace the herbs, but it's warm and soothing. You put it in a cloth towel, wrap it like a loaf, test the temperature on your wrist, and place it on your knee through a cloth pad. The warmth spreads slowly like a good storyteller. No noise, no rush. Next to it, a little witch hazel in a brown bottle. If there's any left, wait to be patted on after the poultice is removed to constrict blood vessels and tighten the lips. Don't mix things haphazardly. Each has its own card. You write a note in charcoal on the lid of the tin. Plantwort, calming, yarrow, stops rust, willow, pain relieving, elm bark, moisturizing, flaxseed, warming, soothing, honey, draws water from trouble. Not to brag, but to avoid confusion in the morning. You add a line. Do not use gunpowder, mud, chewing tobacco. In this part of the world, the list of prohibited items is as important as the bag. Outside the tent, the wind carries the scent of sage like a letter. You remember the smell of sawdust mixed with eggshells at the tavern, a soothing base for the evening, and find that poultices are also a gentle base, only applied to the skin. Both teach the same lesson. What keeps properly moistened is noisy. Joke 3 passes by. The tin bowl asks for the additional title of teaching assistant, and you promise to polish it with a lap of boiling water. You step back, look at the trio you have used many nights: boiling water, clean bandages, poultices. 3 instruments of different tones but harmoniously harmonizing. You put your hand on the bandages, feel the skin breathing under them. Not soaked, not parched. You make a schedule. Change the poultice at dawn, wash it, apply a thin layer of amber ointment if the edges are dry, and bandage it lightly. If it is hot, you change to cool poultices made of elm bark. If it is cold, warm flax seeds like a story by the stove. Before you lie down, you send a wordless thank you to your nameless teachers. The midwife who points out leaves, the blacksmith who tells stories, the coachman who lends you an elm bark, the farmer who lends you some honey. Historians still argue whether frontier medicine is a web of knowledge or a patchwork of chance. But you, the student of the night, see it as patchwork, each piece a story, stitched together with clean thread and time. You pull the covers back, turn down the fire to a single linseed ember. In the soft darkness, the scent of plantain and honey mixes with the scent of saddle leather, forming a perfume that is hard to name. Careful. Where the doctor may be 100 miles away, you have added another voice to your kit, a warm, patient, unpretentious voice. The night breathes slowly, so does the skin. And you, the little guardian of a little wound, slip into sleep as gently as a poultice slips into place, just right. The first sound you hear is not the wind but a rattle, like someone tapping a spoon on a glass, a rattle. You freeze, your eyes scanning the edge of the rock. The viper coils under the sage bush, its head protruding like a small spear. In this meadow, it is nature's doorbell, politely announcing before sending a complaint. You take a step back, too, no running, no tugging at the hem of your coat. But fate sometimes likes to bend the rules. Your ankle moves, and the creature leaps forward like a flash and snaps. 2 dots of teeth like colons on the skin. The pain comes in half a breath, hot, piercing, and stubborn. You take a deep breath, name the things you've learned, calm, still, call someone. No cutting, no smoking, no hard liquor, no tight bandages. You sit down in the shade, Raise your leg a little higher with a bundle of hay, and breathe evenly like you're napping. The indigo triangular scarf, the all-purpose, resident, applies for work again. You wrap it like a loose band, keeping your ankle from wobbling without choking your blood vessels. Joke 1 flashes. The scarf holds its head high. Side hustle, teaching panic people to breathe. You give it an A right away. You don't pour water on the wound. You wash your hands, then gently wipe around it with clean, boiled, warm water to remove the dirt. No scrubbing, no. Cleaning with zeal. Bandage lightly with lint, leaving the tooth marks visible to the next person. Place a cloth-wrapped coin, presser, a little away from the edge of the wound if bleeding is normal, but avoid pressing directly on the bite. You remove any constricting clothing, shoes, bracelets, because the swelling will come like a herd of cattle at the bar, crowded and noisy. Whiskey looks at you like he's calling for battle. You shake your head, a little sip for the nerves is fine, but drunks will talk faster than you can walk. Joke 2, drink on hip. I don't get the lead role? A supporting role today, my friend. Mainstream fact, as solid as a riverbank, rattlesnakes, Crotalus species, are distributed throughout the Southwest and Great Plains. In the 19th century, antivenom was not yet available in the frontier. The first serums were available in the early 20th century, far from you tonight, so the most practical advice has always been, reduce activity to slow the spread of venom, immobilize the limb, and find a person. Many bites are actually dry, the snake warns, not injects venom, but you don't wait for hope. You choose discipline, stay still, ask for help, wait for light or a signal. You hear the tavern stories again. Make an X and smoke, tie a tourniquet, fill in gunpowder and light it. These have the flavor of a pot of hot beans, hot and exciting, but skin and blood don't like the spice. Making an incision opens a new door for infection. Sucking with your mouth brings bacteria into the wound. A tourniquet too long cuts off good blood, leaving behind consequences that are not rumored. Fire, you learned the night before. Another burn is not medical. Historians still debate how often cut-suck tourniquets actually saved lives, or whether they were more a ritual of collective reassurance. Diaries from the time give mixed results, and town newspapers always favor the smoke story. Instead, you do small but sure things. Mark the time of the bite with charcoal on the lid of the box. Every 10 or 15 minutes, use a knife to lightly score the bandage, without touching the skin, to mark the swelling, like a tied line, to see how fast or slow it is progressing. Drink warm water in small sips, boiled, not strong coffee, for the heart is reason enough. Keep yourself warm enough, without shivering. If you have a companion, send them to fetch help, the camp midwife, a strong blacksmith, or someone with a fast cart, and tell them to bring a plank for a stretcher. You do not ride in this situation. The jolts are the venom's accomplices. Quirky tidbits crawl out of the folklore chest. The mad stone, a porous pebble taken from the stomach of a ruminant, said to absorb snake venom and rabies. Some swear they saw it stick and spit it out when it was full of venom, washed in milk, and stuck again. You smile kindly at the legend, as kind history does, but tonight, the only mad stone you believe in is a footstool, immobilizing you. Another thing once worn as a charm was a string of snake tail segments, shaken for good luck. The best charm, after all, is a slow-breathing head. You use a wide bandage to tie a loose tie, above and below the wound to remind the muscles to go slow. No tourniquet. You learned that lesson in the compression chapter. When the pain increases, you place a warm, not hot, towel near the area to calm the muscles, avoiding applying cold directly to the wound because deep cold can cause the blood vessels to constrict unpredictably. You check the toenail, press white then pink, to make sure the bandage isn't the main character. You look up at the sky. Why are you still patient? you decide to imitate. Historians still argue whether the fatality rate from snake bites in the West is as high as legend has it. Anecdotes like to tell of people falling in the middle of the trail. Sparse statistics suggest that most survive, especially if they keep still, have friends, and are not too far away. The problem is geography. Between the bite and a skilled hand there may be half a day's journey, a rainstorm, and a bridgeless stream. The answer, then, lies not in the bottle or the knife. It lies in speed, slow inside, fast outside calling, and in the order practiced over many nights: boiling water, clean ice, immobility. You recall the contents of the chest: iodine, phenol, either are antidotes. They are only peripheral. Clean the area, keep the wound clean. Ointment? No, don't cover it. The bite needs to be dry on the outside, not polished. Poultice? Not now. Heat and moisture can draw more blood. You take a sip of warm water, lower your arm, and practice counting your breaths like you would a stream. Slow, steady, without breaking the bank. If you have someone nearby, this is when they do some calming things. Reassure, shade, sweat away flies, the flannel is, air protection, check your breathing, and plan a less bumpy route back to camp. They can take notes. Time of bite, location, snake description if safe, don't hunt it, mark the swelling. They're also tasked with keeping any self-proclaimed wine doctors from creeping in with noisy advice. Tonight, calm cures more than enthusiasm. You grow tired, but the tiredness is orderly. The throbbing turns to dull pain, then to a grunt of endurance. The bandage is clean and dry. The teeth marks are still clear under the lint like two lowered exclamation points. You take short naps. When you open them, you look at the mold. The swelling no longer runs like a frightened horse. You give yourself a very small joke. 3. If I need a talisman, I'll choose eggshells mixed with sawdust, the soft floor of a tavern, to rest on all evening. It's true. By keeping the floor soft, less vibration, less loud talking, less stunts, you give your body the chance to do what it's good at, delaying trouble. Dawn will bring you the midwife with the bottle of hazel, the blacksmith with his strong arms, the coachman with the board and the forceps. If you're lucky, the traveling doctor will be in town this week. They can loosen the bandages, look at the swelling, rest you on a stretcher, and take you back to shade, boiling water, and the warning: no heroes this time. Until then, your strategy is old and new. Stay still, breathe, sip warm water, tell stories softly to make time last longer, and trust your evening practice. Know when to do it, and when not to. Maybe tomorrow night you'll sit back by the stove, watch the coffee pot exhale, and chuckle at having chosen the less exciting path. No cutting, no smoking, no detox, liquor, no fire. The snake is still a citizen of the prairie. You're still a polite passerby. And in between is a space of silence, where patience remains, like a medicine not sold in stores. The fire crackles like an old friend telling an overexcited story, and you, holding the coffee pot, accidentally scrape your forearm against the shiny black side of the pot. The heat stings like a bee sting, then recedes into a long burning sensation. Before your mind starts inventing magic tricks, you do the slow breather thing, remove the heat source, put the thing down, and put your arm in clean, cool, cooled water that flows gently. No ice, no icy water. The skin has just been insulted. Don't make it learn to swim in an icy river. You let the gentle water coax you for a few long minutes with a song. The heat recedes like a horse's whinnying. Ring, bracelet, leather strap on your wrist? Take it off immediately. The swelling will come like a herd of cattle at the gate, and metal hates the expansion of flesh. Joke one smiles. The ring begs to stay at the party. You. Friendly banishment. Promising it after breakfast. When the surface stops burning, let it air dry, without rubbing. If clothing gets on the stain, fabric, wool, Don't pull it off, cut around it, and let a professional handle the stubborn part. Cover the burned area with a clean linen cloth soaked in cool water, thin as an apology, and then bandage it loosely so that the cloth is evenly applied. No fat, no butter, no fragrant, freshly fried beef tallow. That's a stove, not a medicine. Fat retains heat and invites dust to the party. Remember the lesson of boiling water: clean, cool, patient. These 3 words can sometimes save more than any noisy family remedy. Mainstream fact: as quietly as a wick flick, in the 19th century, many family and military medical manuals recommended Carron oil, a mixture of linseed oil and lime water, for burns to relieve pain and insulate against air. The name originated at the Carron Ironworks in Scotland and spread to the United States. Later, doctors began to suspect that occlusive oils were too likely to breed trouble, and Lister's students recommended clean, moderately moist gauze, changed frequently, less oil, more cleanliness. Historians still argue whether, on the frontier, people switched from Carron oil and grease to the moist clean method quickly, and whether the immediate pleasure, relief, misled them about the risk of later infection. You move away from the stove, letting the remaining fire do the work of cooking soup, not being a doctor. The cool damp cloth on your skin murmurs like a child's coaxing. You check to see if there are blisters. If the blister is small, you leave it alone. It's a temporary roof the body has built. Breaking the roof only invites wind and dust in. If the blister is large and cramped, you make a mental note. Wait for the good hands in camp or town. Tonight the task is to cool, to cover, don't rush to fix the house. Iodine, phenol? Don't apply it directly to the burned skin. It stings more and helps less. Your amber ointment? Apply it very thinly after a few hours, when the surface has cooled and is no longer smoldering. The goal is to moisturize lightly, not to cover it up. Quirky tidbits wafted through like the smell of roasting onions, many farm hands used. Bread and milk poultice. For minor burns, bread soaked in warm milk, gently squeezed, and draped over a cloth to shield the skin from the harshness of the stove. Others swore by mashed potatoes or strong, cool tea. Tannins were astringent. You smiled at your kitchen cousins, for the kitchen and medicine were still under the same roof in this part of the world. But you kept the basics: cool and clean, soft cloths, changed regularly. Anything that smelled of dinner should stay out of the door. The moonlight brightens the corner of the tent and brings up the burn of another season, the sun. You've ridden all day through the white grasslands, and by night, the back of your neck is burning like a slow fire. Same for the sun. Get out of the sun, drink warm water, boiled, get in the shade. Cool, damp cloths for the back of your neck, shoulders, ears. Diluted witch hazel patted on the red areas. It's diplomatic, not combative. In some camps, people use diluted vinegar or buttermilk to soak the cloth. This kitchen smell makes the dogs curious, but the skin breathes a sigh of relief. Joke 2 chuckles. The triangular towel asks for the title of beach lifeguard, and you give it a pass, as long as the beach is a water tank. You pause to list the no's. No ash, no butter, no thick egg whites, no gunpowder. Yes, someone tried it. No thick rosin on hot skin. All prefer to be sealed and leave a long story for later. If you must cover it up for protection while traveling, you choose clean, moderately damp gauze. Change it regularly. Each time you open it, rinse it gently with clean warm water, let it air dry, then cover it thinly again. The coal stove wants to intervene? You invite it back to its old role, warming the water, not the skin. Another useful item comes to mind: the shadow. The cow-running sun is no joke, and the wide brims of hats, scarves, and long-sleeved shirts are what doctors don't talk about. Mainstream facts, too, are as plain as print. Frontier women wore wide-brimmed bonnets and thin capes to keep out the sun. Men wore scarves and heavy shirts, not just for politeness but for practical medicine. Farm diaries are full of beet burn entries. Diluted vinegar and damp towels were the two most frequently cited items. Historians still argue whether Westerners sacrificed comfort for sun protection, thick shirts, tight collars, and whether the risk of heat stroke was sometimes underestimated. These lines of debate remind you that between sun and wind, the body is a tough negotiator. You look back at the kitchen burn, no oozing, warm, red but docile. You change to a fresh, cool cloth, dab a thin drop of honey around the edge, not thickly. The ancients used honey on wounds because it was absorbent. You use it as a short whisper, not a speech. The silk bandage falls back into place, neat as a folded letter. If the skin is dry and pulled by morning, you apply a very thin layer of amber ointment to keep it from cracking. If it feels warm again or red, you know the drill. Wash, let it air out, find someone. You review one more. If you accidentally do something big. Lesson: burns larger than an open hand, face, hands, groin, or around an extremity. That's an emergency ticket. Tonight you just cool and cover it. The way back to camp and to the doctor is up to the wheels. Smoke inhalation? Hoarse voice, cough, soot around the nose. No more counting tricks. Leave the smoke, warm water, find someone. In the kitchen, smoke is a spice. In the lungs, smoke is an uninvited guest. You try to probe a point of common debate: butter, sealing, immediate relief, versus clean, moist gauze, prevents infection later. You remember the stories in the tavern. One man swears butter heals like magic. Another holds up his arm with a scar as shiny as wax. Historians still argue whether the convenience of the kitchen deceives the eye and nose about the treatment. You side with the soft floor that has saved you many nights. Cool water, soft cloths, changed regularly, checked every time, patience. Joke 3 crawls out from the corner of the tent like a cat. The coffee pot calls itself head of cooling, offering a raise of an extra teaspoon tomorrow morning. You agree. Boiled coffee is a good friend to both guts and burns, as long as it stays in the cup, not on the skin. The night wind blows, carrying the clean scent of sage like a freshly laundered towel. You pull back the blanket, rest your forearm on the rolled-up shirt, the sting receding into a warm, gentle streak. Somewhere, an insect taps the tent canvas like a spoon clinking a glass, reminding you to count your breaths. You review your checklist: cool, cover, remove jewelry, no grease, no smoke, clean gauze, change regularly, sleep. Before you close your eyes, you look at the little red embers like cherries, beautiful, but respectful of distance. Fire is for cooking, not for healing. The sun is for lighting the way, not for burning. And you, the student of the past few nights, are just doing the same thing. Choosing gentleness over bravery, cleanliness over fragrance, slowness over shock. Tomorrow morning your forearms will frown less, and the ring will be invited back to breakfast with the warning: be careful, the kitchen is a good storyteller. Too much. The sun rises like a lazy furnace, unhurried but sure. You pull the shade of your hat low, feel the hot wind licking across the step as if someone were drying the whole area's hair. The sweat drains faster than you pour water down your throat, and your mind begins to spout nonsense. The classic sign of a brain that has used salt to write poetry, and then run out of ink. You choose the lesson you have learned: shade first, water later, salt after, slowly like a kind hand. You find shade, the shadow of a rock, the edge of a cottonwood sapling, the side of a wagon where the canvas hangs down to form a makeshift roof. You take off your coat but keep the thin lining over your arms. The sun here is like a stove. What you need is distance, not courage. The indigo triangular scarf, you have used it for many jobs, is soaked and draped around the back of your neck. A second scarf, wrung out, is placed under your armpits or groin for a few minutes and then changed. The transit stations, of heat. Joke 1 pokes his head in. The scarf asks for a promotion to air conditioning director, which you sign immediately, paid in steam. You pour water from a leather bag. You've wrapped it in a wet cloth hung in the shade, a trick of evaporation that makes the water cool like a slow burn tale. In some camps, canvas water bags are hung by the wheels. Desert water bags. So the wind can do its work on the road. You use a smaller version, a wet burlap-wrapped canteen. How do you drink? Not slurp, like a thirsty horse. You sip, hold it in your mouth for a beat, swallow, count the sun's shadow moving a finger on the ground. Then pause. Then sip. Drinking in spurts only turns your stomach into a bucket, but your body needs spoonfuls. You add a tiny pinch of salt, the saltiness of sweat, stirred with the handle of a wooden spoon, and if there's any left, squeeze a few drops of lemon from the lemon powder packet that has saved you many nights. The water suddenly has a proper story, not just wetness, but reason. Mainstream facts, laid out as neatly as a midday shadow, on both eastern and western farms. 19th century laborers favored switchel, a mixture of apple cider vinegar, ginger, water, sometimes with molasses or honey, to balance the sour, sweet, salty flavors that refreshed their throats and eased their bodies. On the trail, emigrant diaries recounted how on hot days they mixed vinegar water, or lemonade, if available, and shared it by the can. The army distributed salt in its rations. Ox teams took long siesta breaks, setting out before dawn or after dusk to avoid the hottest hours. These habits were not elaborate. They were the gentle mathematics of survival. You take off your shoes, shake off the hot sand, put them back on but loosen the laces. Your feet need room to breathe. Where's the salt when the market is so far away? In the spice bag. A pinch of coarse salt, a few slices of dried lemon, a jar of pickles picked up from a shop. Yes, pickle brine is the body's port of call on a windy, thirsty day. You take a small spoonful of the pickle juice, dilute it in a cup of warm boiled water, the salty sour taste teaching your tongue the lesson. Drink little but right. Quirky tidbit knocks. Many chuck wagon cooks hang a cloth bag of sours, a mixture of lemon powder, sugar, sometimes a little cream of tartar, to mix mock pickles. Some even keep a small barrel of vinegar strapped to the wagon for cooking, washing, and mixing on hot days. You lie half in the shade, half in the wind, airy yet enclosed yet airy. Your heart rate slows, your head makes fewer spelling mistakes. You listen to the wise sayings from the backs of horses that pass through your life. Don't wait until you're thirsty to drink, salt in a pinch, water in a gulp, walk in your own shadow. You take off your hat, pour some water on it, and put it back on. The evaporation borrows your scalp to cool the desert. Joke 2 chuckles, the hat demands a refrigerator's fee, and you pay it back with compliments. Historians still argue whether frontier people really understood the lesson of electrolyte in the scientific sense or just followed their taste, the craving for salt, the craving for sour, and the experience of their muscles. There is also debate about whether drinking light wine in the sun is brave or foolish. Diaries recount laughing and swelling heads. Many town doctors scolded. Wine dilates blood vessels, sweat goes, water goes, and intelligence goes last. The answer, like many of your nights, is somewhere in between. A small sip may calm the shaking hands, but the strategy is warm water, salt, shade, slow rhythm. You review the signs to look for dizziness, hot, dry skin or a lack of sweat, racing pulse, nausea, cramps in the thighs and abdomen, and then the words that don't make sense. That's when the joke stops. Your script: pull the person into the shade, loosen clothing, elevate legs if dizzy, cool tissues with a damp cloth, sip salt water, diluted lemon in sips, not spilled. If the person faints, you don't force them to drink. You cool them down and call them. Here, the hero knows how to wait. You remember the rations. Salt pork makes your throat feel like a well. Cornbread and dried beans are watery, but not filling. That's why the chuck wagon carries sauerkraut, pickles, sometimes a crate of soft cucumbers, not because the menu is fancy, but because the body needs them like a rhyming poem. Mainstream facts, too, are clear as day. The ox teams on Chisholm and Goodnight, Loving often take a long midday rest, setting up siestas for both men and animals. The work schedule is rotated into 2 cool sessions. The water in the waterhole is filtered through towels, sometimes mixed with vinegar to mask the smell. Canteens are wrapped in wet cloths and hung behind the saddle like good-natured little bats. A little tip that saves you many times: don't let your stomach be completely empty. When drinking a lot of water, a piece of dry bread, some salted meat to wash away the saltiness, or a few mashed beans will help the water have a place to sit instead of running away like a passerby. On the other hand, don't turn yourself into a container. Forgetting to drink salt is inviting shock in another way. Your body becomes thin, your limbs speak out with cramps. You choose the middle road. You choose the middle road every night. There is salt, there is water, there is light, there is patience. Another quirky tidbit emerges from memory. Someone put a lead bullet in a water bottle to relieve flatulence. This sounds like a joke, and you treat it like one. Another swears by. Cream of tartar, sprinkled half a pinch into lemon water. It's a mild sourness that keeps you from getting bored with it all day. And you, student of the hearth, stick to the tried and true: vinegar, ginger, lemon powder, a pinch of salt, and the admonition: sip it. You take advantage of this opportunity to create a mobile shade. Prop up the tarpaulin on a pole, tie one end to the saddle, and let the wind blow through. Underneath, you and the canteen breathe together. Every half hour, you dip the towel back into a basin of cool water, boiled and then cooled. Wring it out gently. Each time you do this, your mind will be less steamy. Remember to call the sun by its name. It does not hate you. It only does its job. And you must do your job slowly, steadily, checking, marking. Use charcoal to write a small word on the back of your hand, SIP, to remind yourself not to overdo it. Joke 3 waves from the edge of the canvas. The imaginary pickle jar sends a postcard. Remember me? You laugh. Remember, and I keep the pickle juice for good. The shop's pickle jar, where you learn to use sour salty to teach your throat, suddenly becomes a traveling teacher. Historians still argue whether frontier communities actually had strict water laws that punished waste or whether they relied more on work ethic. Every drop was a promise, everyone knew. The diaries speak in 2 voices. In the desert, water was strictly rationed by shifts. In the river country, the law was in the cook's eye. Everyone knew it at a glance. Either way, you chose to live by strict rules even when no one was watching. Water was divided among men, horses, kettles, and towels. There was no room for waste. The sun changes from burning to incubating. The shadow lengthens like a rain return to the stable. You stand up slowly, not in a hurry to show off your strength. Your throat can speak in full sentences. Your knees stop writing poems without rhyme. You gather your towel, wring it out, and hang it on a rope to let the wind in. The burlap wrapped in the canteen grows heavier with the new water. You write in charcoal on the canvas: sip salt, rest, repeat. The hat, now finished as a cold worker, sits back on your head, casting a shadow over your eyes like a pledge. You tighten your saddle straps, watching the sun fall from the rocks like a curtain closing. There are no fireworks in today's lesson. It's just the sound of sweat learning to return to the body in time. As the horse begins to walk slowly out of the shadows, you hear the coffee pot from the old camp breathing in the distance, a promise that tonight will be mild. You smile, Another reason why this region can survive without miracles: just shade, a pinch of salt, a squeeze of lemon, and someone who knows how to count sips of water like stars. The wind changes to a cold sliding door, blowing through the silver grass like a meticulous sweeper. You pull up your collar, feeling the cold bite through the fabric like an ant that knows the magic of walking through walls. In the snowfield, the cold doesn't scream, it convinces. Your fingertips no longer belong to you, your ears are paper thin, your nose becomes a small boat without a dock. That's when the saddle tricks change jobs again, no longer about ice and iodine, but about the art of warming slowly, not being a hero to the cold. You choose a sheltered spot first, the back of a hill, the edge of a pine forest, the hidden side of a bank, anything that turns the wind into a whisper. You line the ground with saddle pads, rolled up jackets. Hey, the first thing to warm is not your skin, but your back from the heat-absorbing ground. From the pocket, the indigo scarf asks for a job. Wrap it around your head and ears, cover your neck, turn your warm breath into a mini blanket. Joke 1 taps. The scarf asks for the title, portable heater. You sign, and you are paid in warmth. You change out of your wet clothes, without thinking, because wetness is a hypothermia ally. Dry shirt, dry socks, anything that doesn't have snow on it. If you only have wet clothes, you wring them out, hold them over the fire until they're as warm as baby milk. Warm, not hot. The stove is your friend if you keep your distance. Numb skin can't tell when it's too hot. You test the temperature of everything you put against your body with your wrist, from warm rocks to water bottles. The foundation of this game is a slow tempo. Warm your core first, chest, stomach, armpits, groin, then your limbs. The body is the house. Fire the stove first, then the hallway. Mainstream fact, as clear as a stick, is that in the late 19th century, military, medical, and emergency manuals, from the Army Manual to the St. John Ambulance, advised against rubbing snow on frostbitten skin or against vigorous rubbing. Instead, gradually warming the area, removing wet clothing, protecting it from the wind, and if necessary, immersing the frostbitten limb in water at body temperature, approximately 37 to 40 degrees Celsius, testing with the wrist, holding it steady until color and sensation returned. Those cold pages saved many fingers from becoming relatives of frozen potatoes. You pour boiled water, warm, not hot, into the canteen, wrap it in cloth, and place it in the armpits and groin, the logistics hubs of heat. If there are dry stream stones, you warm them in ashes, wrap them thickly in a shirt. Hot stones are temperamental workers. You must teach them manners. Wet shoes. Stuff them with dry cloth, change socks, and make the feet understand that the shore has passed. You do not rub your hands vigorously. Numb skin is a person who has just woken up. Do not shake them. Frostbite, true frostbite, speaks otherwise: skin white, waxy, or gray, hard as wood, no feeling. If so, you don't walk any further on that foot. Each step is a little hammer pounding on the ice in the veins. You set up a tub of warm water in a tin pot. Test the temperature with your wrist until it's as warm as an old man's soup. Then soak gently for 15 to 30 minutes. The pain will return like a noisy relative. That's good. The feeling is reattaching to the body. You don't freeze the person after reheating. If you're not sure there's a warm place to keep them, it's better to cover them up and move them. Don't thaw them in the middle of a storm and then freeze them again. Quirky tidbit enters, holding a stove. On the way, people often roast bricks or potatoes, wrap them in cloth, and stuff them under the blanket to warm their feet. Some families even put the hot bricks in a foot warmer of tin with holes and bring them on board. The baked potato has a wonderful advantage. When it has finished warming the hands of a doctor, it turns into a snack. Joke 2 waves his hand. The potato asks for a promotion to doctor and cook. And you approve it, as long as you keep your distance from the cloth. You make a warm drink: water, weak tea, a little sugar or honey, a pinch of sweat like salt. Avoid strong alcohol. It opens the skin's blood vessels, and the false warmth deceives a colder core. Coffee? A moderate cup. A tired heart needs a steady beat, not a trumpet. You recall the fire on a hot night, the slow, steady, enough principle returns in the winter music. Historians still debate how much cowboys borrowed from their Native American neighbors in their cold fighting strategies, like sweat huts to kickstart circulation, buffalo robes with the fur facing out, or double-lacing moccasins, and whether these practices were universal or just flashpoints among a few bands that worked together. Buffalo hunting diaries tell of buffalo robes, fur-lined hats, and winter cestas on the windbreak. Wagon train diaries tell of wool blankets, hot bricks, and hot water every hour. Both pictures have snow on their edges. You check for signs of hypothermia, drumming shivers, stumbling over words, clumsiness with buttons, strange sleepiness, clammy or dry cold skin. When shivering stops while still cold, that's a red flag. The body is so tired it has given up the right to shiver. Your script: cover from the wind, warm core, sips of warm drinks, another pair of hands to watch. If you're in a group, you assign look-alike duties. Whoever's nose turns pale, whose words get lost, goes into the warm porch right away. Alone? You write a charcoal word on the back of your hand, you reminding yourself to warm your core first. Remember the snow rubbing, a legend as stubborn as stone. Snow rubs away at your skin, leaving your surface open to infection and adding no significant heat. Instead, you apply light pressure with a dry cloth, keeping the wind at bay. If you must continue, line your socks with a dry cloth bag, sprinkle some cornstarch to absorb moisture, a cook's trick, and walk slowly, counting the stars, resting regularly, like changing the guard. By the stove, the coffee pot, a friend of all seasons, breathes warm clouds. You place 2 canteens full of warm water, tested on the wrists, at your hips and chest, and wrap yourself in a blanket. Warm stones wrapped in cloth rest at your feet like 2 good cats. You hear the after-drop, the late shiver as the cold blood from your limbs rushes to your core, and understand why people say to warm your core first, then your limbs. Everything has a schedule. Mainstream facts, too, are as light as wool scarves, thick wool, Mackinaw coats, fur, otter, or coon hats, and non-slip, nailed boots. These came with the fur trade routes and northern textile mills in the late 19th century. Border patrols and sleddists recount the trick of layering many thin layers rather than one thick one, because trapping sweat under your clothes is the quickest way to beat the cold. You soak it up with your own sweat. Open your collar when you're working hard, close it when you're not. Moderation is the head nurse. You gather a few more tricks. Tuck a piece of oiled paper or thin leather into your shirt pocket to block the wind. Tie a scarf around your wrists and ankles to close the air vents. Tuck your hands into your armpits when they're numb. Place a cloth-wrapped kettle on the sole of your foot, not your toes, fingers that like to hear about the kettle from their neighbors rather than be questioned directly. Joke 3 tips off, the kettle mumbles. Don't use me as a pillow. You pat it like a horse, and then put it in its proper place. When the pink returns to your ears and fingertips, you let your body rest some more. Don't win the imaginary race yet. You change into dry socks again if you have them. Check your skin for stubborn waxy patches, and mark the time in charcoal on the lid of the box. Warm. Small discipline, big warmth. If there's a stiff patch that doesn't change color, a sharp increase in pain, or an unusual blister, you know the route. Clean, dry ice, shelter from the wind. Don't rub it, don't walk on it. Find someone in camp or town. A warm house and hands are the last leg of a cold journey. Outside, a thin layer of snow has fallen, like a new tablecloth. You retreat to the windy porch, listening to the pine branches talking in a whisper of words. Inside the blanket, the warmth is distributed to your body like a chef dividing portions, chest first, stomach later, shoulders, then hands. You take another sip of warm, salty water, a lesson learned in the hot season that is surprisingly useful in the cold. In this part of the world, most tips are relatives. As your eyes grow heavy, you know you've done the simplest yet hardest thing, not rushing. No rubbing snow, no fire, no pouring wine, no stomping your numb feet to warm up. You choose kindness, shelter from the wind, dry out, warm the core, soak in a pot, drink little but regularly, wait. A few nights ago, you used boiling water to teach germs to be polite. Tonight, you use a medium pot to teach the cold to be polite. Same lesson, calmness saves lives. You wake up to a quiet, persistent sensation, like someone tapping a finger on the rim of a glass in slow rhythm, stinging, hot, tight. Last night's bandage is still dry, but the skin around the edge of the wound is a little red, like the skin of an apple left near the stove. You lightly touch the back of your hand to it, warmer than a hand's length of skin. The body has its own polite language. Redness is a report, heat is a note, swelling is an underline, heart-pounding pain is an exclamation point. Infection, if it is intentional, always begins in very small print. You pull the tin back, opening it like a handwritten medical record. First, look and smell. No need for prose. Does the color extend beyond the edge of the old bandage? Does the smell seem strange, pungent, sour, or stronger than the residual iodine? Is the forefinger still warm and pink after 2 breaths? You draw a thin circle of charcoal around the red rim, the morning hour, to compare later. Mainstream fact, as neat as a saddle strap, from Civil War military medical manuals to St. John's instructions in the late 19th century, it's been said to mark the margin. A kind of clock without gears. Remove the bandage. No pulling. You moisten the outer layer with warm, boiled water, let it fall away by itself. Underneath, the wound's edge is still tight, but there is a drop of pale yellow fluid standing there like a polite guest who doesn't know how to knock. The fluid is clear, has little odor, that's the normal conversation of the skin. The fluid is cloudy, lumpy like porridge, hot and stinging, has an unpleasant odor. That's when you put up the serious exchange sign. You wash it gently with warm water mixed with salt. Salty as sweat. Let it air dry, then wipe around the edge with a very thin layer of alcohol or iodine. Paint the border. Not. Paint the picture. Joke 1 tiptoes. The tip of a cotton swab asks for the title of border artist. You immediately give it a card, adding, "Only draw the border, don't draw the forest." If the wound shows signs of talking, tense, pulsating, soft like dough in one spot, tilt your head and listen to see if a pus head has formed. Don't be impatient. Opening it too soon will mean arguing all night. When it's ripe, soft, head raised, pressing on the side feels like a wave, the rule in the kitchen is to drain, clean, air, wash the skin, prick very small with a boiled needle, at a low point so the fluid can find its way out. Let it flow naturally, don't wring it out like a shirt. Put a small sterile cotton wick to hold the path. Bandage it properly. Wash twice a day with warm water. Let the wind do the rest. Another mainstream fact, as cautious as the head chef, even during the Civil War, many doctors noted that cleanly drained abscesses healed faster than closed ones. Where there is pus, evacuate pus. An old saying even older than Lister. Historians still argue whether frontier people really fully embraced germ theory in the 1870s, 1890s, or whether they practiced primarily by the clean, airy, dry feeling and attached reason later. Lister, 1867, introduced phenol to surgery. Koch, 1880s, named the causative agent, Iodine was widespread by the end of the century. But farm diaries tell of something else: boiling water, wind, sunshine, clean bandages, and the habit of changing them regularly. Whether theory goes a long way or a short way, the patient hand is always there. You establish a schedule for the wound: morning, afternoon, evening. Each time, wash with warm, boiled water, let dry, dab a thin layer of antiseptic around the edges, apply new lint, bandage lightly. If there is a wick, replace it with a short wick every 12 to 24 hours until the discharge is light and clear. Don't apply thick ointment under an occlusive dressing. Skin needs to breathe, not enamel. When the edges are dry and docile, apply a thin layer of amber ointment to keep the skin from cracking. Flies? Stretch a piece of gauze like a net. Flies are not nurses. They are journalists with the taste for sensational stories. Quirky tidbits. Some farm ladies pin dried rosemary or mint around the bed. The smell doesn't cure the disease, but it discourages the flies and makes the patient feel at home, not in the stable. The red light, signs you know by heart: redness spreading beyond the coal mark, increasing swelling, sharp pain with the heartbeat, strange odor, chills, fever, night sweats, thin red streaks running down the limbs toward the armpits or groin. Lymphangitis, people call it angry streaks, painful. Swollen lymph nodes like marbles. Another old name that everyone here fears: lockjaw, tetanus. Dirt mixed with feces, rusty nails, horseshoes, causes jaw stiffness, stiff neck, convulsions, no pun intended. On paper, by the end of the 19th century, there was tetanus antitoxin in the city. Out in the field, what you had was careful washing from the first minute, leaving deep punctures unsealed, let them, get clean, and find someone when you could. You wrote a big line in charcoal on the lid of the box. Prick plus dirt equals NO closure. You consider the stitching you've done. The edges are tight, but if the second day it's red, hot, and painful, you're ready to cut the stitches and open them up to let them breathe. Pride doesn't protect tissue. There's no metaphor. Holding the stitches to the end. You learn the lesson of closing late, letting them be completely clean before closing them, from the last few nights. Joke 2 frowns, the knot whispers, "I want to stay," and you pat your shoulder. "Go on vacation, we'll figure it out tomorrow." You also review the gentle helpers, thin honey, which has saved many a shallow wound by drawing water away from bacteria, sugar dressing under gauze, which both absorbs and keeps flies away when the bandage is covered, which hazel patted around the edges to constrict blood vessels, diluted vinegar wiped away to relieve itching. But you avoid the big-mouthed heroes: kerosene, chewing tobacco, ash directly on the wound. All sound like good stories, but act like bad ones. And you remember the smell rule: clean smells are vague. Strong smells are invitations not to write for trouble. Mainstream fact intervenes like a librarian. Civil War doctors recorded that maggots, fly larvae, help clear necrotic tissue, causing wounds to heal miraculously. Later medical literature used them with caution. At camp, you didn't invite them to dinner. Your job was to keep the flies out of the door with fine gauze, change your bandages regularly, and keep the floor as soft as a sawdust and eggshells-strewn tavern floor. Your callback to the first quiet night, so that no one would have to interfere with that odd guest. You check your body like a horse before setting out. Dry tongue? Take a sip of warm, boiled water with a pinch of salt. Cold sweat? Add a blanket. Racing pulse? Lie down. Elevate injured limbs. Don't prove by riding long distances. Historians still debate whether the death rate from septicemia in the West was as high as rumored or was lower because of young bodies, hard work, and the harsh selection of long distances. Lost records, anonymous cemeteries, and tavern tales make the picture both blurry and noisy. You adopt the only attitude that will help tonight. Treat every little sign as a telegram. Read carefully, respond promptly. Your dressing schedule is orchestral. First day, 2-3 times. When good, 2 times. When dry, 1, each time keeping the rhythm of wash, dry, edge, bandage. If you're working in the fields, you wrap the wound in a clean bandage. Roll up your sleeves to keep the dust from getting to you. If you have to wash in a stream, you scoop water into a pot, boil it, let it cool. Don't dip the wound directly into the water where a herd of calves are talking. June flies are troublesome editors. December's cold winds are reporters. Both love a story. Without bandages, you write a when to seek help list on the lid of the box. Fever for more than a day. Redness spreading beyond the charcoal mold. Pain that increases with the beat. Red streaks moving toward the armpits/groin. Pus that is cloudy and foul-smelling. Shivering, weakness, limpness, jaw stiffness. The camp midwife, the blacksmith with steady hands, or the traveling doctor, any pair of hands with clean habits, is better than self-esteem. In this part of the world, knowing how to ask for help is a survival skill. Joke 3 emerges from the corner of the tent with a small sign. Poultice and Friends Clinic adjourned for lunch. Afternoon shift is for wash, dress, observation. You stamp your approval with the click of the tin lid. Outside, the wind brushes through the sage like a patient nurse. Inside, the wound breathes under gauze like a student doing homework. You lift the coffee pot, your perennial friend, off the coals and pour a warm sip. The familiar smell reminds you that small order always quiets loud noise. Before you rebandage, you look at the charcoal circle you drew that morning, adding a thin line if necessary. It's like the curfew sign you hang outside your shop. Cross it, and you'll be questioned. The body, like a small town, likes polite boundaries. You put on fresh lint, tape it just right, mark the knot where it won't hurt, lift the limb a little. Write down the time. There's no magic here, just the old story, clean, dry, change it regularly, and know when to call someone else to hold the light. You pull the covers back, place the tin box at hand like a ledger under the counter, and listen to the night fall as softly as sawdust mixed with eggshells, another callback to chuckle to yourself. If the red tomorrow recedes, you win by being patient. If not, you win by leaving early. Either way is a victory for the one who chooses kindness over strength. In this part of the world, courtesy in small things is still the best medicine you can carry. The night is so quiet you can hear a small moan somewhere in your jaw, a steady, self-proclaimed poet's rhythm. Thumb, thump, thumb. Your right molar suddenly becomes a tiny sun, warming up with each heartbeat as if it wants to hold its own festival. You breathe slowly, pull out your familiar indigo triangle, and do the simplest thing first, boil water. The coffee pot has experienced countless nights. This time, it helps you make warm salt water, salty as sweat. You take a sip, swish it around the sore spot, count to 10 to the rhythm of the falling coals. The salt water doesn't make poetry, but it speaks politely to your gums. It cleans, constricts blood vessels, and coaxes them from getting angry. You spit it out, and take it again. 3 times is enough, like 3 short apologies to the tooth that's writing a resignation letter. Joke 1 interrupts. My resignation letter is stamped. The tooth murmurs. You say, let me review it later, now be quiet. You rummage through the tin, a small bottle of clove oil you'd exchanged with the farm's owner the day before. The scent of the uncapped cloves is a winter bakery, spicy, sweet, warming. You twist a pea-sized cotton strand, soak it in a drop, just one, and place it gently in the cavity where your tooth complains. The eugenol in the cloves is a nerve-soothing musician. It doesn't repair the house, but it tells the neighbor to speak softly. You bite the cotton gently to keep it still, avoiding letting the oil touch your gums. Gums have dignity, too. When the stinging pain recedes, you exhale as if you've tied a beautiful knot. Mainstream fact, as plain as the label. In the 19th century, oil of cloves, eugenol, was a standard trick for dentists and housewives alike. Toothache drops, sold in pharmacies, were often mixed with eugenol, sometimes with phenol or alcohol. In larger towns with dentists, eugenol-soaked cotton balls were inserted into cavities to soothe them before temporary fillings. Out in the fields, finger-sized jars of cloves became the camp's lullaby. You continue the gentle rather than hit exercise. Warm towel on the outside cheek for a few minutes, then change to a cool one to reduce swelling. Rinse your mouth with warm salt water again. Pick up a thin whittle toothpick carved from a willow branch and gently remove the piece of dried meat stuck between your teeth. Not digging too deep, not irritating a troubled nerve. You sip warm water, no strong coffee, no alcohol. Because both of you like to teach your heart to beat louder than it needs to. Quirky tidbits visit like a visitor with a souvenir box. In some places people hang dried peppercorns or cloves on a thread, saying, to calm the teeth. A blacksmith swears by chewing willow bark for pain. Salison speaks to the nerves in a low voice. In some shops, druggists peddle tooth drops, with a dash of cocaine or phenol, numbing, indeed, like a saccharine story, but leaving an unwelcome hangover the next day. You're polite to the legend, but tonight you're on the salt, clove, warm towel side. Historians still debate whether, on the frontier, people relied more on traveling barbers, tooth pullers, or on real dentists who visited towns seasonally, and how long the toothworm theory persisted in the imagination, since many old advertisements even showed smoked worms running out. Diaries tell of all sorts. On a town festival, a man pushing a cart with a tooth puller, sighing, his forceps shining like the moon. Another day, a midwife inserting cloves, chatting until the pain receded like a stubborn horse given grass. When will you have to consider parting ways with your tooth? Not tonight, you whisper to yourself, unless an infection has made your face swell like an apple and fever is knocking on your door. But you lay out your scenario anyway, like someone rehearsing a retreat. Wait for the morning, find someone with a steady hand, a barber or dentist, and ask them to use real forceps, the pliers with curved jaws that are the shape of a tooth. Another neat little mainstream fact: before the mid-19th century, the tooth key, a hook-shaped tooth key, used for turning and pulling, was prone to breaking the root of the tooth and tearing the gum. Gradually modern forceps took over, replacing brute force with clamp, loosen, straighten, less dramatic and more benevolent. Can you borrow a blacksmith's pliers? Maybe, but they are made for holding iron, not teeth. Rough jaws, sharp edges, loud speaking, force. If you can help it, in the textbook of bad nights, you still prioritize rinsing your mouth with warm salt water, wiping the pliers with alcohol, heating them over a kettle, letting them cool, warm cloth on your cheek, using a sharp pen tip to probe your gums for ripe pus that needs to be drained first. Only do it when your teeth are loose like a rotten fence. And even then, two people are better than one. One holds the head, one holds the pliers. Pull straight along the tooth's axis. Don't twist like opening a honey jar. You exhale when you realize you're teaching yourself to wait. Wait for someone to come by. Wait for the real pliers to come. Wait for dawn to be your light assistant. Joke 2 sneaks in. The blacksmith's pliers call themselves periodontists. You immediately revoke their license. In the meantime, build a soft waiting room. Avoid sweets in the cavity. Avoid chewing on the painful tooth. Rub the tooth's surface very lightly with clean charcoal powder mixed with salt. Then rinse thoroughly. Charcoal is like fine sandpaper. Don't turn it into coarse sandpaper. If your cheek is swollen, apply a cool towel every 10 to 15 minutes, separated by warm breaks. Don't soak it in the cold until it's numb. The blood vessels love delicacy. Write in charcoal on the lid of the box. Warm salt, cloves, avoid alcohol. See you in the morning. Another line. No drilling, no burning, no pouring gunpowder. The head needs rules when the tooth is screaming. You recall the voices in the tavern, the string tied to the doorknob, a slam, the cheers, the tooth falling like a pebble on the floor. The rhyme, but the gums and alveolar bone don't like poetry. The lateral force of the jerk leaves a broken root, a splinter of bone, and a bacterial drama a few days later. You look at the tent doorknob, it looks at you, both of you shake your heads. Joke 3, the handle sighs. I quit being a dentist a long time ago. To make the night go smoothly, you change the clothes every hour. Hold warm salt in your mouth whenever your teeth want to have a party. Prop your head up when you lie down so your cheeks don't fall toward the party. If the pain beats like a war drum, you sip willow tea, if you have any, or apply a warm compress. The steady beat beats the brass. You imagine the pain as an untamed horse. Instead of arguing, you go around it, block it with the regularity of warm water, with the smell of cloves, with a quiet conversation to yourself. Tomorrow there's someone. Tonight just be quiet. You also think of the long-term causes: sugar, strong coffee with sugar, chewing tobacco, mineral-rich spring water that sticks to enamel, all your evening apartment drinking buddies in your teeth. In some towns, the traveling dentist sets out to make temporary fillings of zinc phosphate cement or gutta percha. In others, the midwife teaches you to dip toothpicks in hardwood ashes and twist horsehair into a thread, to clean between your teeth, at least. You make a mental appointment. If you make it through the cow season, buy a hog-bristled toothbrush from the grocery store, and a packet of peppermint tooth powder. Little things save nights. Outside, the wind makes the tent canvas breathe low. Inside, the clove lies like a little letter under the door, the warm salt water plays the role of a gentle guard, and the pain retreats a few steps. You close your eyes between sucking and spitting, feeling your tongue stop probing for the hole like a bad habit learning to be polite. If tomorrow morning your cheeks are hot or swollen, your breath smells like construction site. You know where to go, find someone, a barber, a dentist, and a chair with a solid back. If you're lucky, tonight will be just a song with a short clove solo. Before the orchestra silently returns, you pour the last sip of warm water, lie down on the roll, and write a final line on the lid of the box. See you soon. In the silent folds, the sound of teeth clenching turns into a whisper like that of a clean glass on the counter, only a soft background. In this region, people survive the long night with little things: a pinch of salt, a drop of oil, a second of waiting. And you, the faithful student of the previous nights, add to the list of over-the-counter medicines, patience. The explosion is not loud, like a whip in the air, then silence. You do not collapse, you only feel your biceps numb, growing hot as if someone had placed a hot stone on your skin. The night on the prairie holds your breath for a beat. No fireworks, only life suddenly demanding the old lesson: stop the bleeding first, argue later. You kneel down, pull the bandage from your all-purpose shirt, place the white lint on the wound, press with the palm of your hand as if calming a frightened colt. If the blood oozes steadily, you exhale. If it spurts out a rhythmic red stream, an artery, your lesson springs to life. Strong pressure, lift the limb, a coin-wrapped pressure button, and only when absolutely necessary, a tourniquet, marking the time with charcoal on the skin, checking every few moments. You do not pour whiskey on the wound. Today it is only allowed to sit on the edge. Alcohol and iodine are the captains of the edge of the wound, while inside is the territory of warm boiled water, quiet, and no knives. You wash your hands quickly with warm water, already in a polite coffee pot, rinse around the wound with a gentle stream, let it air dry. Apply iodine thinly like drawing a map border, do not pour it inside. Let the wound be an exit, not a reception. If there is an exit hole, you treat it exactly like an entrance. Thin lint, medium bandage, do not stuff it to silence the conversation. Joke 1 blink, the tape whispers. I like peace, not stuffing. You nod and immediately give it the law of silence. You look at your biceps, try to move your fingers. They feel still, warm. The nail presses are white and then pink. The pulse is not panicking. You temporarily splint them with 2 wooden sticks wrapped in cloth, a lesson learned in the splinting chapter. Wrap them in a spiral with a wide strip of cloth so that if the bone is chipped or scarred, there will be less objections. From the charcoal stove, the kettle tilts its head. Here is warm water. And you do one more thing that wise people do. Cover yourself with a blanket, keeping your core warm. Cold makes your pulse convulse. And you want your blood to behave. Mainstream fact, as clear as ink on paper, in the Civil War. Manuals of military surgery, and later doctors' books, the first recommendation for bullet wounds is to stop the bleeding and immobilize. Extraction is considered only when it is shallow, visible, or causing dangerous compression. Many doctors of the time would rather leave the bullet in place than invite infection into their home. The low velocity of lead fragments in early black powder guns meant that wounds were often neat than those of later guns. Survival depends on less knife work, more cleaning. You don't need a book to understand. Tonight, knives are uninvited guests. Historians still argue whether frontiersmen actually found their own bullets with pocket knives or were more willing to wait for skilled hands. Diaries and town papers tell 2 stories. Some boasted of pieces of lead lying on the counter. Others lived on nothing but ice and warm water. There was another debate, as loud as the rattle of glasses. Was the gun violence in cowtowns as high as legend had it? Records show that cow season was boisterous but murderous than the movies make it out to be. You're not judging that tonight. Tonight is the little order, class. If the wound is on the chest and you hear the breathing like a ragged flag, no need for a lecture. Cover the hole with an oilcloth, a piece of oilcloth from a raincoat, or a thin sheet of beeswax from your amber ointment, pressing the edges, especially when you see the pink foam rising. With that wind plug, you turn the chest into a house that blocks the cold wind. Don't compress it around the chest until it's suffocating. The breath needs a proper way in and out. Keep the person lying slightly on his side toward the wound so that the blood and fluids don't demand to go through the throat. Talk to him slowly, like talking to a horse that's just scared of thunder. A steady rhythm saves lives. You hear the kettle remind you. Warm water sip by sip, no alcohol. Alcohol makes the pulse noisy. UNOD.I in the abdomen, the law is more sparing. Cover it up, don't force it to eat or drink, don't. Take a look. Wait for skill. You know your shirt has saved your life many times, but it's not the door to the abdomen. Any suspicion of pushing out the stuff in the house? Just keep it lightly moist, cover it with gauze, cover it with an oilcloth to keep the wind out, and find a car. Joke 2 tiptoes. The dagger is about to charge. You point to the audience. No role for you tonight. You still need a practical eye, a tiny access point that can hide the fracture below. A long, wide splint with thick padding on the ankle, knee, elbow. Holding the person as if he were an important letter, slowly, steadily, without shaking. Time it. Mark the red and swollen areas with charcoal. Mark the margin. Trick you used the night of the infection. Check the nail bed. Is it pink again? Warm? Numb? Repeated questions are what keep the night peaceful. Quirky tidbits, passing like a sensible tavern tale. Not a few breast pockets in those days held a slim Bible, a wallet, or a cigarette case. And these things really did cool the bullet, sometimes stopping it altogether. They were displayed on the counter. A book with a hollow in it, a piece of lead inside like a nut. You smiled because you knew your lucky charms tonight were different. A button, coin, a bandage from a shirt, a sprig from a branch, and a kettle like a patient hourglass. Another mainstream fact, brought to mind by the ill-fated president. In 1881, President Garfield's physician repeatedly inserted his finger and probe into a bullet wound without properly disinfecting it. Many historians believe that infection killed him more than the bullet itself, and the event propelled the Listerine movement, sanitary, into the American public consciousness. News traveled by rail and in print. Even saloons learned to smell iodine without wincing. So you put down your knives, pick up your clean towels, choose patience. You think of the don'ts. Don't pour gunpowder or stuff cotton soaked in kerosene into the wound. Both turn the wound into a field stove. Don't pour strong phenol straight into the hole. The skin will remember you with a burn. Don't pull out the clinging cloth when it's well stopping the bleeding. Put on a new layer, letting the old one retire in due time. You write in charcoal on the lid of the box. No digging, no burning, no showing off your courage. You make a mixology, warm boiled water with a pinch of salt, salty as sweat, to wash the mouth when needed. A little witch hazel patted around the bruise to constrict blood vessels, don't pour it on the wound, and a spoonful of honey to keep the injured person's lips from cracking, don't put it on the wound. If it's cold, you use a cloth-wrapped bottle of warm water in the armpits and groin, a lesson you learned in winter. If it's hot, shade and sips of water, a lesson you learned in summer. Take over the role of choir leader. The seasons before help you tonight like a close relative. You also wonder whether lead poisoning from a deeply lodged bullet was a major concern in the 19th century or rare. Cases of lead palsy certainly existed, but frontier diaries often made no distinction from the fatigue of the long journey. Your post remains the same. Leave things alone, call for help when you have the skills, and prioritize cleanliness. Stop bleeding, warmth, splint, slow travel. If you have to travel back to camp, make a stretcher with 2 poles and a tarp. Tie 3 swathes across the chest, hips, thighs so that the car can go over potholes without turning the potholes into assistant doctors. Choose a road with little bumps, stopping at intervals to check if the tape has changed color. Fix the coin pressure button, if necessary. When passing a shop, remember the floor of sawdust mixed with eggshells. A soft floor makes for a quiet night. The trip back to camp also needs that soft floor. Less loud talking, less bumps, more even breathing. Joke 3 is light as steam, the shirt boasts. Your CV is so long now. Bandages, slings, splints, stretchers. You pat it on the shoulder. Your main job is still sun protection. It laughs a little and then obediently becomes a bandage again. Finally, you go over the checklist, in a whisper. Stop the bleeding, yes. Elevate, yes. Splint, yes. Wash around, yes. Do not dig, yes. Warm and sip water, yes. Note the time, swelling, yes. Route back to camp, yes. You write on the lid of the box. Getting to the person, soon. Then you sit next to the injured person, if it is you, lying on your side, your back against the warm ground, listening to the coffee pot bubbling. The steam speaks the familiar gentle language. Clean, slow, even. The night closed with the sound of the wind like a velvet curtain. The bullet, if it survived, would become a story of another morning with different hands and brighter lights. Tonight was only a story of small actions saving big things. In this land, people survive not by playing heroes, but by the old script, don't add new wounds to old wounds. You nodded to your shadow on the tent canvas. Another lesson, silent and useful. You pull out your saddlebag as if opening a drawer of memory. Inside, between the shirt band and the roll of little clouds, lint, are several glass bottles with worn labels, the writing curling like a talkative speaker. A brown bottle reads, Sarsaparilla, tonic and blood purifier. A small amber bottle reads, toothache drops. And a long, thin bottle, its label faded to the color of tea. Laudanum. The smell of alcohol, anise, cloves, and a touch of something like an old rainy night rises up at the same time. In this part of the world, when pain goes beyond the reach of boiling water and clean bandages, people sometimes resort to a good night's story. But you have learned, good stories require a rhythm. You look at the kettle, the hard judge of many nights, and nod to yourself. If you use it as a lullaby, not as a brass instrument. Remember the afternoon in town, the medicine cart pulled up to the shop, the drums going. Tum-tum. The salesman in the big hat and tails sang in a voice like he was counting clouds. Kickapoo sagwa, blood purifier. Dr. Kilmer's swamp root, kidneys thank you. Lydia Pinkham's, lady's best friend. People gathered in circles, laughed, bought, and chose to believe the label or the banjo, depending on their mood. Mainstream fact, plain as day, in the late 19th century, patent medicines abounded in America, many containing brandy, morphine, opium, or cocaine hidden under sacred lettering. It was the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 that forced labeling, cutting back on the colorful promises. Before then, the West learned to trust and be wary, the way you trust a squeaky bar stool. Sit on it, but don't bounce on it. You lift the laudanum bottle to the light. It comes from the family pharmacy in Dodge City. The cork is tight, the warnings faint as a reminder from afar. Why do you carry it? Because some nights your toothache calls for a party. Some minutes you need to drag your nerves into the shave for a few stitches. But you write your rules right there on the glass and charcoal. Drops, no sips. Night, no day. No mixing with whiskey. No use alone in the field if the injury is mysterious. You mark a small line on the label. Each time you use it, it will be there, so that tomorrow your memory doesn't play the poet. Joke 1 interrupts. The bottle shakes slightly, as if singing along with the medicine cart. You tap the cap. No solo tonight. Historians still argue whether how much cowboys and frontiersmen relied on laudanum. Diaries note. A spoonful for sleep. Others decry. Black medicine that turns people to clouds. And many choose to endure pain with strong coffee because they have to watch their cows and their men. There is also another debate. Is snake oil a hoax, or was there ever a decent original? Quirky tidbits come from the railroad. Chinese laborers brought water snake oil, rich in omega-3, to massage their joints. Later, American traveling caravans sold snake oil, that was mineral oil, and the story slipped from the nutty to the sleazy. From then on, snake oil became the proper name for any overly shiny promise. You open the bottle of toothache drops, warm, oven-baked cloves. The little label says, eugenol. You've tried it, and know it soothes the nerves like a low lullaby. You put a drop on a cotton ball, place it on the poetic tooth, and promise to change it in an hour. And sarsaparilla? Mostly sugar, rooty. Some have a touch of quinine or alcohol. Some promise only purification. You categorize it as social talk. On a hot day, diluted with boiled water, it's a soothing drink. The all-healing salve. With the bear? Lots of grease, turpentine, beeswax. You've used it to dry the edges of the wound, but not to smear it thickly on the open wound. In this region's wardrobe, the ones who know their stuff stay. The ones who like to show off take the audience seat. You have also met the traveling doctor. Dark coat, black leather bag, the smell of carbolic drifting past like news. When he sews, he sometimes puts a few drops of chloroform on a handkerchief, saying, "Smell it a little," a short cloud, or he injects morphine pellets under the skin. You remember, it is a hand with a ruler and a person standing over the pulse. And you, when there is only fire and wind, use gentle lullabies, cloves, willow tea, warm water. When the night is too noisy, you choose to wait for someone rather than invite the thick clouds into the tent. You write the sign. Enough, right, don't. Write on the lid of the tin can, enough, clove drops for teeth. Light willow bark tea, salicin, for long distance bone pain. Thin honey for hoarse throat. Correct. Laudanum drops. With someone by your side, marked. No steering, no mixing with alcohol. Only at night. Don't give it to children. Give it to people with shallow breathing. Use it to brave yourself. For something that requires a steady hand. Call it a party. You laugh because you know it. Sounds like the saloon keeper. But the saloon keeper is the one who keeps the town asleep. Joke 2 peeks out, whiskey on hip. Am I a painkiller? You shake your head. You're a loud musician. Tonight we need a lullaby. Another, more flimsy mainstream fact. In the late 19th century, many soothing syrups for children contained morphine. Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup was famous, which caused controversy in the press and among doctors. It was these incidents, along with cocaine-like drinks like coca wine, that pushed society to demand real labeling, and it became law in 1906. The news also reached the West in newspapers and by word of mouth. Midwives at the asylum began to say, "Read before you drink." And you learned to place the bottle next to the kettle, so that the sight of the kettle would always make it less pungent. You think of pain, the difficult guest. Pain is both a fire alarm and a dinner breaker. You soothe it with slow rhythms, warm salt water in the mouth, a warm towel on the shoulder, ginger tea, light switchel vinegar, for the stomach, a rest on the saddlebag, a story without guns. When you need more, you resort to clove drops, laudanum drops, no spoons. And you mark the time as you did with the bandages. Drops at, so that the night does not slip away into memory. Historians still debate whether the frontier was really as infested with drugs as the legends say, or whether most of the working class was too poor, too busy, to support an expensive habit. The court papers and the big hospitals tell tragic stories, but the cowboy diaries are full of pain. Drink a sip of water, go to bed. You don't judge by emotion, you judge tonight by discipline. The strong ones mark, the sweet ones dilute, the vague ones leave for tomorrow to ask someone who knows. You suddenly remember a gentle but effective trick: sugar, salt, warm water in the right proportions, the poor but faithful ORS. When someone is vomiting from pain and sun, add a few drops of ginger to calm the throat. You put the bottle in the dark. Sunlight spoils many things quickly, and wrap it in tarpaulin. The tent is quiet, the wind is low. Joke 3 walks over like a cat. The coffee pot is the self-proclaimed labeling police, demanding the right to inspect every bottle before opening it. You nod. From now on, every bottle must pass through its hands. Before you lie down, you write another line in your paperless notebook. Pain plans. Level 1, warm water, rest, warm towel/cool compress, willow tea. Level 2, cloves, which Hazel applied externally, thin honey. Level 3, when you have a watch and are staying overnight, laudanum drops. In the morning, change to water, sunlight, thin porridge. You keep your plan by your bedside like a soft whip by your saddle, not to whip hard, but to remind your horse and yourself that speed is determined by a light rein. Outside, the air is cold and steady. Inside, the smell of cloves mingles with the wax of sewing thread, forming a kitchen-side dispensary scent. You hear the soft background, like the old sawdust mixed with eggshells, drifting through the tent. Tomorrow, perhaps, you will meet a medicine cart on Main Street. The seller will play his banjo, promising to cure your sorrows. You will smile, buy a spare bottle of cloves, refuse the all-purpose one, and return to the kettle, the most severe and just judge. In a land that loves big stories, you choose the sensible drops. You pull the covers back, put the bottle in a dark corner, put the bandage, splint, needle, bottle, warmth back in its place on the invisible shelf of the night. Order is good medicine, and you have prepared it with your own hands, part clean, part slow, part honest. As your eyes close, you hear the bottle cap rattle like a glass on the counter, not for a toast, but for a good night. This morning you did not touch the medicine box first, you touched the soap. A bar of coarse homemade lye, rounded like an old pillow, smelling of grease and wood ash, the smell of peace. In this part of the country, most trouble dies at the gate if the gate is called. Washing hands. You pump water from the leather bag into the basin, adding a little of the water you boiled last night, making it warm as baby milk. You scrub between your fingers, your nails, your wrists, counting slowly, like a horse crossing a bridge. The clean nails look like a precisely sharpened knife, ready but not boastful. Joke one flashes by. The bar of soap demands to have its name on the plaque. You agree, writing in large letters. Unknown hero. You set up your makeshift latrine, as a rule. Your rules: downwind of the camp, below the water source and as far away from it as 2 stories you don't want to mix, at least. Half a shooting range. Then cover it with dirt, lightly covered with ash if you have it. Mainstream fact, straight as a fence, from the Civil War to St. John's manuals of the late 19th century, the latrine is stressed as far downwind and away from water. Camps are more sick from dirty water and flies than from bullets. You don't have a warning sign, but you have a shovel and habit, 2 little words at last. Dishwashing liquid? You divide it into 3 basins, the first with soap, the second with hot water, warm, the third with a little diluted vinegar to bind, shrink grease, remove odors. You dry the dishes on a rack made of 2 branches and rope, face down in the sun. The sun is an unpaid sterilizing assistant. Dishcloth? Boil in the same water and wring it out. The damp, dirty cloth is the boarding house of something you won't name. Historians still argue whether the cattle drives, chuck wagons, and trails really kept their kitchens so clean that you can eat something without a scratch, as the cookie myth goes, or whether that's just sugar-coated talk. But cookie diaries are rife with scolding cowboys for not washing their hands, which means they had rules. You tend your bed like a wound, spread the blankets in the sun, beat the dust away from the camp, stir the straw, let the wind blow. Insects do not like the orderliness of the sun. If there are lice, an ancient visitor to every journey, boiling water and sunlight are the way to go. Boil towels, undershirts, dry the seams, brush with a thick comb, dab the seams with diluted vinegar, sometimes making them think again. Quirky tidbits: some people sprinkle flea powder around the edges of their mats. Back then there was sulfur powder, some places used dried lavender powder. You choose the gentle things: sun, boiling water, and a good comb. The clean smell is not fragrant, it is odorless. After the stove comes the drinking water. You continue the safety chain: scoop, filter, boil, let warm, pour into clean bottle, cap. The bottle you use must have a house, a damp cloth wrapped around it to cool by evaporation. Your kettle friend does his morning ritual again. It never gets bored, and neither do you. You carve 2 words into the wall of your camp with the tip of your knife. Water first, to remind you that every day, sewing, bandaging, cooking, mixing, begins with clean water. Another mainstream fact, as clear as print: in the Civil War, more than half of deaths were from disease, diarrhea, typhoid, dysentery, rather than from wounds. That lesson carries over to the frontier with discharged soldiers, hand-washing, boiling, and a disapproving look at flies. You fight flies with the poor cloth trick: stretch a thin piece of gauze over a small wooden frame placed over a bowl of food. Tie a white cloth around the mouth of a water jar. Hang a damp rag with mints/cloves on the tent door. The smell is not medicinal, but flies hate it for some reason. Burn kitchen waste, bury it, or transport it far away. The pile of trash near the camp is the fly's newsroom. Joke 2. A fly demands a press card, which you confiscate with a layer of gauze. You prepare the operating room, a clean board placed on 2 saddles as a table, a pot of boiling water waiting, clean towels drying in the sun, bottles of alcohol and iodine standing alone, charcoal stoves nearby but not together. The stove is the stove, the table is the table. Knives, scissors, needles, boil, dry, put on clean cloth. Hands, soap first, then a little alcohol around the wrists, let dry. You tie your hair with a towel, roll up your shirt, and tell yourself, do not touch dirty what has just been cleaned. This rule is stronger than any heroic story. Also pay attention to this shed, where clean and dirty things are kept. Used gauze is put in a basin of soapy water. Clean things are stored in dry cloth bags, hung high to avoid dust. Boots? Dry outside, not next to the stove. The smell of hot leather attracts flies like a trumpet calling a parade. Water for cleaning the tent floor. Warm water with a little vinegar. Wipe gently. Let air dry. Sawdust mixed with eggshells. A callback to the tavern. Sprinkled thinly at the door to make a soft, dry floor. Clean feet means clean bed. Clean bed means clean stains. Food. You keep the salted meat in the coolest place. Hang it up. Wash your hands before cutting. The meat cleaver does not cut raw vegetables. The wooden cutting board is rubbed with salt, vinegar, and washed in hot water. Historians still argue whether cattle ranches have hospital-like kitchen standards. Some diaries praise cookies as doctors. Some diaries criticize pots as coal pits. You choose the side. That can be done. Each hand washing is a vote for a peaceful night. You set up a foot corner, something that few people talk about but saves days. A basin of warm salt water for your feet after a trip. A small knife to remove thick dead skin from your heels so it doesn't tear. A light dusting of cornstarch before putting on socks. 2 pairs of socks. 1 wet, 1 dry. So your feet always have a dry home. The prickly heat rash between your toes is an early warning sign. You soothe it with dryness, not cosmetics. Toenails are cut straight across, not at the corners. Ingrown nails are a storyteller. You tell the story of ashes, as you tell the story of money. Hardwood ash, pour water, draw a lie, can be used to make soap with old grease. Ash sprinkled thinly on a toilet. Ash sweeps damp floors. Ash absorbs the smell of old pots. Ash is an old friend who knows many things. But you avoid harsh chemicals. Corrosive sublimate, mercury, was once sold by some drug stores as an antiseptic. You leave it at the door of your memory. It kills even the things you want to keep. Vinegar, alcohol, iodine, boiling water. Enough, no need to add a tyrannical official to the camp. 18 noon. You shake out your bag, checking expiration dates by your nose. Stinking fat. Rub oil with beeswax and a little turpentine. Damp gauze, boil, dry. Fungus-infested thread. Burn the tip. Cut off the damaged part. Torn oilcloth. Patch with melted beeswax. You write on the lid of the box. Clean out the store, 1st to 15th. The cleaning schedule is a vaccine not sold in stores. Soft mainstream fact. Army reconnaissance teams used to police the camp, clean up, as an official morning task. The police was not about arresting people, but about catching trash. In the afternoon, you check the water source. Has a herd of cows recently waded in the stream? If so, draw from the upper section, avoiding the wading area. Does the well have a strange smell? The ancients sprinkled bluestone, copper sulfate, in the trough to keep the water fresh. You choose to boil and cover it. Heavy metals are not on your menu. Historians still debate whether tricks like putting a coin in a milk bottle actually slow down spoilage or are just good luck charms. You use the coin as a suppressor, as usual, in the area it excels at. Joke 3 comes like a cat stepping lightly across the threshold. The broom asks to be promoted to assistant doctor, because every day it hides some disease from the eyes. You pat the broom handle. Your salary is a basin of hot water every night. The broom nods, and the floor of the tent sounds clean like a steady breath. When the sky turns purple, you sigh and feel relieved. There are no new stains all day, the old ones are gentle. You understand why stoves, soap, latrine, and rags appear in the diary as often as guns and horses. The weapons that defeat infection in this region are not heroes swinging swords. They are things done every day, boring as drizzle but effective as timely rain. You spread out the sun-dried blanket, the smell of sunlight mixed with the smell of beeswax and cloves, creating a homely smell. You place the unknown hero, soap near the sink, so that it is the first thing you see in the morning. And you understand, most peaceful nights are decided by the morning hand-washing. The stomach speaks before the crow, not a song, but a roll of rubbed carbon paper, wriggle, ripple, murmur. You sit up slowly, listening to the digestive system asking for permission to speak. On long journeys, cuts are noisy and should be noticed. The fights in the stomach are silent until the calves cramp and the throat is as dry as a trail. This is the lesson of water, salt, sugar, cool shade, and moderation. The doctor may be miles away, but your kettle is right here, with the habit of boiling patiently like a cowherd counting the stars. You light a small fire, boil a pot of clean water, let it cool to lukewarm. In a tin cup, you mix a poor but wise salt and sugar water. A pinch of salt as small as sweat, 2 pinch of sugar not too generously, stir until dissolved. Taste, salter than tears, sweeter than a compliment. Sip each sip, pause each breath. With an upset stomach, drinking it in gulps is a way to teach it to be more upset. You add a few slices of dried ginger from the spice bag, if any, a warm apology to the stomach. Joke 1 looks in. The wooden spoon claims to be salt sugar pharmacist. You stamp it with a stirring ring. Mainstream facts, no background needed. During the Civil War, more people died from diarrhea, dysentery, and typhoid than from bullets. Military medical handbooks recommended boiling water, shade, and a bland diet. On farms and in caravans, people used rice water, barley water, and toast water to soothe the bowels. Quinine was present for malaria. For intestinal ailments, paregoric, diluted opium, was used to slow down, but also made the bowels lazy. Historians still debate whether frontiersmen understood dehydration as the real enemy or were just inadvertently doing the right thing by indulging in thin porridge and rice water. Many diaries describe food, rarely mention electrolytes, but cups of salt water and sugar appear as often as cows crossing streams. You blow on the roasted rice and pour in water. Rice water is the prairie version. Lightly roast a handful of rice until fragrant like a barn. Pour in boiling water, let it sit for a while, and strain the inside. It's a light blanket spread over the intestines, speaking softly, not showing off. If the food bag has arrowroot or tapioca, dilute it. If you have blackberry cordial, add a few drops. The tannins in the fruit help quiet the intestines. Quirky tidbit. Many farm owners swear by burnt toast water. Burnt toast, soaked in water strained. The faint smoky smell makes the sick person believe someone has cooked peace for them. Rhythm is medicine. Every 10-15 minutes you take a few sips. If you vomit, wait 5 minutes and start with smaller sips. When your stomach protests less, you eat soft, light, thin porridge, mashed potatoes, hardtack cooked soft in bone broth. Avoid fat, avoid peppers, avoid alcohol. Alcohol opens the blood vessels and closes the mind. Joke 2, the bottle of whiskey on the shelf, akimbo, you say. Tonight I'm only invited to smell it. You split the signs in your head. Clear yellow, calm, cloudy, smelly, red, call for help. If the diarrhea is bloody, the abdomen is tight as a rope, the fever is high, the mouth is dry, the eyes are sunken, that's when you turn into a telegrapher. Take a break, sip water, keep your core warm, find a car. The way to the midwife or doctor is no longer an after-lunch affair. Don't hold on to laudanum if you're weak or have a high fever. Holding back too much will trap the trouble inside. If you vomit repeatedly, you switch tactics. Suck on spoonfuls of ice chips, boiled water that's been frozen or broken into flakes, or just gargle and spit, so your stomach remembers it's not being squeezed. You also visit the respiratory ward, a regular visitor to the cold night, cough, runny nose, chest as heavy as a wet shirt. Your post, moist warmth, pot of hot water nearby, towel overhead to inhale slowly, onion honey syrup, roasted onions mixed with honey, strained, a small spoon, no gaps, chest rub with a little pine oil, beeswax to keep warm, not thick, mustard plaster applied thinly and for minutes. Mustard is a hot-tempered teacher, too long is a scolding. Mainstream facts, silent as falling snow. Beef tea, chicken broth, linseed poultice, and chestnut cough syrup, all standards of the 19th century medical kitchen. Expectorants containing ammonium chloride appeared in pharmacies, and homes had onion, honey, ginger. Old friends, calomel, mercury, antimony, tartar emetic, come knocking, boasting of their purging, vomiting credentials. You shut the door. They had tired more people than they had healed. In the cities, the late 19th century newspapers had begun to scold them, and 1906 made their lives even harder. Historians still debate how high the abuse of purgatives was in the West, for records are scarce. But tales of blue mass that make people shiver are not uncommon. In your tent, the only seats are warm water, salt, sugar, rice, porridge, and shade. You hang a white towel as a quiet flag in front of your tent, an internal signal. Anyone passing by should speak softly. The loud noise makes your stomach think of protesting. You place a water ladle near the latrine and sprinkle ash on the hole after each use, so that flies don't open the newsroom. You wash your hands before eating, after going, before making water, after clearing the dishes. Yesterday's lesson, soap, clean tent, proper latrine, is today's vaccine.by afternoon. The fever knocks, politely but persistently. You wipe yourself with a warm towel on the neck, armpits, groin, changing the towel when it cools. Drink a sip of cool water, boiled. Open your collar to let the sweat escape. Willow bark tea takes a step back from the headache. Don't add coffee. The heart has enough to do. If the fever is accompanied by chills, then heat, then sweating, with the harmonica playing rhythm, think of malaria. Quinine can be found in the town pharmacy, when it can be bought, and for tonight, the plan is warm blankets, regular water, rest, wait for someone to go to the drug market in the morning. You burn off mosquitoes with dry leaf smoke, not a pleasant smell, but polite to sleep. You make a list of don'ts. Don't take a bath in wine. Don't mix kerosene with sugar to cure a cough. Don't put gunpowder in your stomach. Your stomach is a sensitive instrument. It can't handle fireworks. Don't hold back on water for fear of going too much. Water is the proper traffic cop for your intestines. Don't eat too much to gain strength. Porridge and time are the real burdens. Joke 3 passes by. The bowl of porridge asks for a silence medal. You nod and put a grain of salt on the edge of the bowl. Remember to call for help when needed. A child is faint. An adult is too thirsty to speak. Sunken eyes, dry cracked lips. No urine for hours. Diarrhea lasting more than 2 days or containing blood. Abdominal pain concentrated in one area. Worse, when lifting the right leg, the appendix is a guest who does not like to wait. In such cases, the kettle and the porridge are for holding the sugar. The other hand is for fixing the sugar. Historians still argue whether blackberry cordial cures the bowels by tannins or by mother sitting beside and whispering. Tea toast cures the bowels by mild colds or by a restful stomach. And you, the student of the night, find the formula always the same: clean water, slowly, little and steady, bland and kind, sleep. None of this is dramatic. But in the morning the horse will bow its head to drink, and the stomach will cease to be a poet. You draw a small box on the lid of the tin. Sugar, salt, rice, ginger, raspberries, willow, onion, honey. Next to it, you draw a diagonal line through the words: calomel, antimony, kerosene. In the corner of the tent, you pin a white towel, a flag of silence, for the wind to read. Night falls like a blanket dried in the sun. The stove crackles with all its might, but you keep the fire low. Your stomach likes people talking softly. If you can walk tomorrow, you are grateful for the porridge. If you need a car tomorrow, you are grateful for the red light sign you wrote tonight. Both roads begin with a cup of warm salted water and the word slow. You lie on your side, holding the warm water to your belly like a truce. Outside, the sage brush against the wind like painted paper. Inside, the spoon taps the cup to the rhythm of your slowed heartbeat. The pain recedes like a herd of cattle crossing a bridge. You close your eyes, thinking of the times you chose gentleness over bravery, and find, every time, the night rewards you with silence. This morning you spread out your saddlebags like a little grocery store for calm. Each item is a story you've learned to tell without shouting. You start with the heart of every night: the pitch-black kettle, the tin mug, and the indigo triangle, 3 instruments that open almost every song. Next to it are the flattened lint clouds, a strip of old shirts rolled into a ribbon, a handful of bobby pins, if you don't have any, mesquite thorns and a little beeswax make poor pins, a pair of small tweezers, scissors, a few bent needles for corks, a jar of linen thread for waxing, and a bag of shiny coins for pressure plugs. You set aside the iodine and the alcohol bottles, telling yourself like a colt: clean hands first, clean clothes later, then the stain. Joke 1 shows up. The coin demands a promotion to pressure supervisor, which you immediately promote, along with the disciplinary order of medium compression. You gather the herbs and kitchen corner, a packet of lemon powder, a pinch of salt, a jar of apple cider vinegar, dried ginger, honey, a bag of slippery elm bark, a few flax seeds, a few strips of willow bark, dried plantain leaves, a bunch of yarrow, and a little granulated sugar for sugar dressing. Next to it is a bottle of finger oil of cloves, a bottle of brown witch hazel, a small alum pen, and a box of amber ointment, turpentine, beeswax, clean grease, to apply thinly when the edges are dry. You set aside the heavy stuff, a bottle of laudanum marked with charcoal, drops, not sips, night, not day, with someone, not alone. On the lid of the tin, you write the 4 words that have sustained you through 19 nights: water, clean, slow, call. Mainstream facts, as gentle as the words on the page. The American Red Cross was founded in 1881. St. John Ambulance began first aid classes in England in the 1870s and then spread. Their pamphlets and handbooks found their way to the frontier. A few traveling doctors tucked triangle handkerchief posters into their pockets. Historians still argue whether these lessons were truly ingrained in pre-century cowboy life or whether they were more a network of midwives, blacksmiths, cookies passing around tips on cleanliness, warmth, breathability, bandages, splints. The diary includes both voices: the classroom under the roof of the newly built church, and the classroom around the chuck wagon stove when it rained. You pack your clean camp, a bar of lye soap, a boiled washcloth, a roll of fine gauze for a fly net, a small shovel for the latrine, a cloth bag hung high to store clean things, a piece of tarpaulin as a windbreak for a punctured chest, and a tarp to build a shade. Shade is a medicine whose brand is rattan. You wrap a piece of wet burlap around your water bottle, evaporative cooling, a lifesaver on a hot afternoon. A full canteen, hung in an easy-to-reach place, a wide-brimmed hat, ready to return to the refrigeration trade. You tape to the lid of the box the 6-step process, like a charcoal poster: hemostasis, pressure, lift, depression, tourniquet only if impossible, time, check pink nail again, wash boiled water, warm, iodine stain edge, thin alcohol. Do not pour hot things inside. Bandage, splint, medium bandage, leaving breathing space. Double-sided splint, thick padding, sling, swathe when shaking, apply. Soothe, poultice in the right place, at the right heat, at the right time, honey, sugar, elm bark when needed. No. Greenhouse. Sutures, only when clean, early, single stitch, flat button, wick if in doubt, stitch removal schedule. No heat, no gunpowder, no bravado. Call for help when the red streak runs, fever, pain in rhythm, wheezing. Quirky tidbits chime in like a bird of good news. Campers sometimes use boiled horsetail feathers as scalp threads. In some places, thin yucca thorns are split into makeshift needles, smeared with beeswax to keep them slippery. Safety pins aren't common yet. A mesquite thorn plus beeswax flake holds the bandage like a polite doorman. You smile, remembering the sawdust mixed with eggshells at the bar. The soft ground never betrays. And find everything in your bag does the same, small, done right, keeping the ground soft against the body. You teach yourself the plan to leave camp: a 2-pole stretcher, a tarpaulin, 3 swathes across your body, stops every half hour to check the ice, a smooth route, a signal to call people, a white handkerchief tied to a pole, a list of names: the midwife at the river farm, the blacksmith. With a steady hand, the traveling doctor who visits town every Saturday. You put a note in the lid of the box: who delivers, who stays, who goes first to clear the way. On the tarpaulin you write in charcoal: no heroes, just order. You tap your fingers to count the open debates, to remind yourself to be humble. Historians still argue whether cowboys really lived on whiskey and solo courage, or whether it was more the collective discipline of the bullring, where cookies played nurse, and each man learned a lesson from the soldiers, midwives, natives, and drugstore science. They also debated the ratio of bullet wounds to falls. Falls, it turns out, were the king of injuries. You nod. The lessons you've learned along the way: water, soap, bandages, splints, shade, salt, don't take sides. They work even when history is busy, arguing. Joke 2 pokes his head out of the tape. The triangular handkerchief insists on printing on its edge: stove ice ball. As an advertising slogan, you click your tongue. Okay, but short. The kettle, hearing this, asks to be sheriff. Checking every bottle before opening it, you hand over your badge and hat. The coin taps the cup with a clatter. My turn. You write a 5-word pocket recipe for the future to put in their hat: drink, wash, bandage, fracture, rest. And a small italicized line: learn the names of the good people within a day's journey. In this part of the world, the best doctor is sometimes the shortest route to your neighbor. Now you put everything back in its place: clean clothes in a cloth bag hung high, dirty clothes in a soap dish, the little stove glowing red like fire, the canvas roof stretched at the right angle for the wind. Before you tie the bag, you look at the paperless notebook on the lid of the box: a thicket of black charcoal, hours, stitches, bandage changes, V-marks over items checked, names of people to call in bad weather. Looking at the board is like looking into a mirror in a tavern. It doubles your tent, half objects, half order. Joke 3 stops by to say hello, the shirt says. May I ever be allowed to just make shirts? You smile. Tomorrow, if no one falls off the saddle, if the knife is not merciless, if the sun is gentle, I will just make shirts. The shirt smiles with its fuzzy fibers, a small hope, just like the hope of this region. You put on your helmet, tighten your saddle strap. The biggest lesson of the whole journey is suddenly reduced to a few small but sure actions. Boil water, wash your hands, apply the right bandage, splint correctly, change regularly, get enough sleep, call the right person at the right time. The no doctor turns out to be just another way of saying, everyone learns a little for when they need it. And you, the faithful student of the night, pack it all into a saddlebag that is not very heavy, but enough to make a small town sleep better. Now you rest your saddlebag against the tent pole and sit down, as slowly as dropping a leaf onto the steps. The small fire curls up, exhaling thin sheets of light, enough to see your hand, not enough to name anything beyond. The kettle makes a few very soft gurgles, like someone nodding in the dark. You place your palm on the smooth ice, not to count, just to know that everything is in the right place, with the right pressure. There is no hissing, no impatient pulsing. Just a warm, gentle, listening surface. Outside, the wind brushes the sage with long fingers, drawing a clean scent into the tent, the lingering scent of old sunlight, of dried cloth, of boiled water. You visualize the sequence of movements that has accompanied you: scoop, boil, warm, wash, bandage, splint, set high, rest. Each word flows with the breath, connecting into a soft, smooth path, free of rolling stones. You no longer need to memorize it. Your body remembers for you, like a horse remembers the way back to the stable in the twilight. If tomorrow is sunny, the hat will again cast a cool shadow across your eyes. If tomorrow afternoon is windy, the canvas roof will again know which side to turn to. If any pain arises, the kettle will move closer, the towel will lie on your shoulder, and the conversation will proceed slowly as it is now. No rush, no showing off, no need to assert. You let your eyelids grow heavy, let your hands be still like two little birds that have chosen their branches. At the end of the day, everything boils down to a few words: sip, breathe, let go, sleep. Under the ice, skin talks to time. Outside the tent, wind talks to grass, and between the two conversations is you, listening. As the fire fades to a punctuation mark, you smile, so softly that the smile is just a thought, and then close, round as a flat knot.